Welcome to Phails. My name is Philip Jones, and today I'm here with Anita Robertson. She is LCSW. I'm here with Anita Robertson, LCSW. She is an author and ADHD relationship therapist. She wrote the book ADHD and Us, A Couple's Guide to Loving and Living with Adult ADHD. Wave to everybody. Anita, they're inside those cameras.
Which camera do I look at?
I don't know. That one and that one are the ones that'll pick up you.
Okay.
And today, Phil fails at relationships. Romantic relationships, to be specific. But these types of tools and practices apply to any kind of relationship. Right?
Yes, for sure. The stuff that I work with and kind of the guide is good for friendships, for family relationships, for kids, all of these things. However, my area of expertise and what I tend to work with more is adult romantic relationships.
Yeah. So today, Phil fails at relationship.
Yay. Exciting.
I'll explain a little bit failure for you as we go into the Phil fails 5 questions.
Okay.
In our culture, at least the way I've internalized it, there's like success and failure. Mm-hmm. And success is some kind of destination. Once you got it, you're just successful. You're full of success forever. It's like an end point. And over here, there's failure. And it's like, no, I don't ever want to have that. I hide it whenever I experience it. It's like, it's not good. And this is really good. You show everybody this on all the places where you show the world who you are in your life. And part of the show and this practice is reframing that to success being more like a scent, like a hound dog gets a scent, and every step closer, the scent gets greater. You know you're on the right track. You could think about it as like flow state, or like, being really in touch with your mission and your purpose and moving towards it, optimizing. It's not a destination. We'll constantly improve, constantly get better. Mm-hmm. And over here, there's not really failure at all. There's like just not doing or like discontinuing the journey, like just not. And everything in between is failure, synonymous with learning.
Yep.
Yeah, wayfinding, those types of things. So when I ask you these questions, you can kind of like put in learning or that type of stuff for the word failure.
Yeah. Do you want to hear like a little bit of how I talk about it in my book and the work with couples of what you just said? Okay. So when you look at like psychology terms, what you're talking about success is a fixed mindset. So fixed mindset says that you're either smart or you're dumb. You're athletic or you're not athletic. You're talented or you're crap. And most of the U.S., at least, grows up in a fixed mindset. Now, that is changing because the research on growth mindset, which is exactly what you're talking about, of embracing failure, learning and growing, there isn't really a destination. We all kind of grow and change together. That has been shown to be wonderful. Like I was part of like conducting research on kids for this like 15 years ago probably, or even 20. I don't know. It's been a long time. So part of that growth mindset of what you're talking about is embracing failure. And that's so much of what I do. And I also see as like protective factors when ADHD kids and adults have had experiences where a growth mindset, been in environments where a growth mindset is really present. And while, I have a kid in school and I do think they're doing a lot better than when we were in school for sure. It still is very prevalent in the U.S. And so I think part of that modeling that you're doing and what you're talking about is when you're talking about the psychology terms, it's fixed mindset, success, and it's like it's all or nothing, right? And that internalized like fear and the coping mechanisms and all the things that spiral from growing up in that environment versus that growth mindset environment, which is very liberating and freeing, where you're really able to own failure and embrace it and learn and love and know that, like in one of the courses that I teach, it's like, I love this little meme. It's like failure or fail, first attempt in learning.
Yes, I do the same one. Yeah, first attempt in learning.
Yeah, and so really embracing that. And that's a lot of the times of where I do a lot of work with couples and I do a lot of things to kind of get us out of that fixed mindset, because we have to unlearn these like responses that we were given. They're innate, that we're trained to embrace that growth mindset that you're talking about. So I love the fact that this show is going to model like the journey of what that looks like, because a lot of people are like, okay, great, I know it, but I keep on going back to what I was given. And that comes up a lot in relationships of, you know, we do what we were told when we're frustrated, right? Like, oh, why can't you do this? Why can't this be easy for you? This shouldn't be so hard. Like, you know, these all or nothing, this critical, this all reward. I have to punish the other person so they'll learn, like things that we didn't really appreciate. But like when you're stressed or when, you know, your brain isn't working fully, we go back to what we were given. And so learning how to embrace that growth mindset is and that's really what you're talking about, of failure and learning. And and that I think that keeps the relationship safe too, because like hopefully we're not the same person as we were last year or 5 years or 10 years ago.
Well, some of the other areas that I've been looking into, whether it's philosophy or mindfulness or all these, it's like impermanence is a big part of it.
Yeah. And in other languages, they really embrace that. The English doesn't as much.
Yeah. There's constant change. That's the only thing that is permanent, is change.
Yeah.
And failure, when I think about it, and in my life, through my attempts to consider doing things, there's been a paralysis that has come from the idea of being seen as imperfect, the suffering through the learning process. And, you know, you have a therapy practice. Lawyers have a legal practice. There's this idea that's built into at least that type of career that you're practicing, you're constantly improving and getting better through every project you undergo. And, you know, whether it's playing music or whether it's, you know, being a software engineer, there's this idea that if I don't put out this thing in its perfect form, I will be, you know, shunned, or there'll be just devastating consequences. And I think those devastating consequences come from within that fixed mindset you're talking about. Once I'm seen as this, I'm stuck there forever.
Well, yeah, because that's reinforced in society. And with ADHD kids, they tend to have more negative messages, right? You're not given the right tools. You know, there's that, you know, famous statistic that's like you, by the age of 12, you get 20,000 more negative messages than your non-ADHD peers. And that has a pretty profound impact. And then when you also look at RSD, which is the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, like that's so intense. And so this coping of, it's one of a coping mechanism, right? From a trauma response of like, okay, I got to be perfect because I want to avoid this.
Being rejected.
Right. And so it's a little bit of twofold, right? There's that part of ADHD that plays a part of it. And it's also part of just like what we were all given as a society and what we're changing. I do think parents and like the new like parenting guides are at least in more embracing, like it's okay to have experiences. You want to learn and grow. We don't want to like, be like, go to your room if you have a feeling, or like stop crying and that type of thing. Where sometimes when you're a parent, you're like, oh, this is really inconvenient to have all these feelings. No wonder we weren't allowed to have them, you know? Like, no wonder we were like,
Well, I was raised with seen and not heard.
Ooh, yeah.
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 All those old school ways of navigating parenting just seem like they didn't honor and respect or accept children's experience.
Yeah. Well, they don't treat children as humans, you know, in a lot of ways. Like the way that we at least used to view kids and what was like acceptable, like hitting and all these other things and yelling, is like you would never treat another adult that way. And we have a lot of expectations of how kids who are learning and growing, developing and dealing with so many things to behave in ways that like us adults can't even behave in.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a book that I read called Why Won't Anyone Play With Me? The book by Carolyn McGuire about, and this is just a book where they talk about all the statistics of an ADHD kiddo or neurodivergent kiddos, where they're just invited to join and participate in groups less. They're invited to parties less. They're just, even if it's subtly, just excluded or ostracized from a lot of normal, you know, social interactions. That's going to have an impact on their emotions. That's going to have an impact on the way they view the world.
Yeah, it has that relational trauma, which is why I love working with relationships, because that's how you heal it. That's how you get a safe environment. And there's tons of studies that sometimes when I present on them too, that talk about, just it starts with the teacher, right? And the teacher and the kid getting in trouble, and how the peers then start taking that on and rejecting them. And the hyperactive gets more of like that rejected type. And then the inattentive, right, the less like disruptive in their head, tends to get neglected or forgotten about. And so there is a lot there that comes up in relationships. And when you're in that primary relationship, a lot of the things that happen, right, are that come from your parents, right? It comes from the foundational relationships that were given, that come out of wounds that need to be healed, or patterns that just seem to be recreated, right? Because that's just how we're wired. And that's, even if it doesn't feel good, it feels safe, right? Because our bodies know how to deal with it. Yeah.
And we're both ADHD, just to let everybody know, right?
Yes.
I don't want to tell your diagnosis.
Oh, no, that's totally fine.
I'm ADHD.
Yeah.
And I think you are too. And for women, is this mansplaining if I say that for women, they're like historically underdiagnosed?
No, that's
just
fact.
Fact-splaining. Okay.
That's a fact.
It's a fact. Women are just historically underdiagnosed.
I mean, women in all medical stuff is like we're last. We're not, undervalued for sure.
Well, not on this show.
Okay, great.
Let's get into Phil Phails' 5 questions.
Okay.
Today, Phil fails at relationships, so the 5 questions will be around ADHD and relationships.
Perfect.
So, first question. How would I fail as an ADHD man in relationships, in romantic relationships?
Okay, so normally this is where it happens is as your relationship time goes on, right? We're talking about more executive functioning demands. And the older we get, the more executive functioning demands are. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of the challenges are with ADHD that are very unique, but make sense when you understand the brain and body science behind it. But in the beginning of the relationship, normally ADHDers can shine unless there's a lot of that relational trauma that we just talked about. But, you get the hyper focus. You're very excited. You're very attentive. There's a lot of different ideas. Maybe you do lots of different activities, all of these different things. There's a lot of novelty to it. And so oftentimes people will say when they date an ADHDer is like, I've never felt so loved. I've never felt so connected, all of those things in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then as the relationship progresses, if you're progressing in the traditional, which is not saying that's the right way to do it, but this is just the more common way, the traditional path where let's say you then maybe plan a wedding, right? Buy a house, have kids. And then all of a sudden you also are dealing with your midlife, aging parents, taking care of aging parents, taking care of your own health issues or your spouse's health issues or all of those things. And so when you look at that, and executive functions are like the ability to do stuff, right? Organization, planning, all of these things. And when you have unsupported ADHD, untreated, unsupported, like the workarounds that you might have had to have a very successful career or do these other things, I kind of talk them like Jenga blocks, like a tower. Mm-hmm. And so like you just, because if you didn't get a guide, if you didn't get that support and like plastic cover, you kind of just start like, okay, figuring it out. And you kind of build a tower that's really cool and pretty functional, but might not be the most stable, right? Where everybody else who society provides at least adequate enough tools has more of a stable foundation. So then when you're getting into more of these executive functioning like overloads and you don't have the right treatment, your tower kind of crumbles a lot faster and it's harder to rebuild. And so what you look at in relationships of where you fail, right, which isn't really failing, it's just environment and everything is like not really supporting you in the way that you deserve, is that there's like these misunderstandings in these stories. Okay, well, wedding planning, right? That's normally where it starts of like, what? Well, why can't they do this? Why can't we send out the invitations or those little boring things or the things you have to do in advance? And then they're like, well, do they even want to get married or does this even happen? And so normally in this like first kind of team experience where you're doing something that's out of your norm, because most people aren't like event planners, right? So you're doing something that both of you are learning and growing. It has this big like symbolic meaning to it. And so that's normally where these things of like, hold on, what's going on? Like where that mismatch of not understanding what executive functioning challenges look like in ADHD and how to like support them in the relationship, that's where it starts breaking down. And then, if you buy a home, not that anyone can do that in this market, at least in Austin anymore, but goodness. Back in the day when you could buy a house here for not that much money, then it's like house maintenance and all these other things. And so when you don't know how to prioritize the thing that's far ahead and isn't urgent in crisis, because that's not where the ADHD brain thrives, you start to have bigger consequences, right? Like, then the AC breaks in the summertime or like your water heater, or all these things where preventative maintenance might have, increased it or the life. And then you're dealing with paperwork and insurance and all these things that I call like ADHD kryptonite, like where our brains just like kind of like just freeze.
It's kind of like the increased complexity of your world is what I'm hearing. As the life and the shared life.
The shared life and the way that because also the US has so little social supports and services compared to most other like wealthy nations, the demand is always on the individual or the family structure. And so as these demands increase and they kind of peak in midlife, right? So all of these other stressors, and that's where you try to, like, if you're using the same tools, like, okay, well, I know I can just get it done. Like, I'll just wait, and then it's the last minute, and I'll get all these things done. But everything else has all these consequences. Your kids' schedules, not signing up for summer camps, because like here in Austin, who the heck, why do we need to sign up for summer camps in January or earlier? And then they're full. So like there's a lot more consequences that maybe when you're in your 20s or even early 30s that you didn't have. And then that can be stressors on the relationship, right? Because it's not just impacting the other person, it's impacting maybe their kids or whoever, if you're taking care of a sick parent or something like that, or animal. Like the feelings get bigger and the stories they don't understand, right?
Yeah. And
so when I was doing a lot of couples counseling training, there's some really, really great ones out there and I really love them. But I just remember sitting in with Sue Johnson in one of her trainings for emotionally focused therapy. And it was like really getting in and understanding like the meaning of the dirty dishes or the shoes on the floor or something like that. And I was just looking at that and I was like, this works really well for so many people. But like for ADHD, you can understand that this impacts your person and you don't want it to impact your person. Yeah. But then either if you don't have the right tools and the right support and all of the things that like help you do the stuff that our brains are not really meant to do in this like daily mundane life, we excel in other areas. This tends to not be the thing unless we're hyper focused on it. It's our special interest. It's almost re-traumatizing. And so I think there's also a lot of therapies and other things out there that aren't really like neurodivergent affirming, like so many other things for any kind of oppressed or marginalized group that happens where it's just like this other person is being labeled bad, just like you said in the book that you read. And so it's this reaffirming, like kind of re-traumatizing pattern where I'm a failure. I can't do anything. I have to do everything for you. Why can't you do this? And then the saddest thing is that I see most ADHD couples, and this is generally talking about like ADHD and non-ADHD, because two ADHDers might have a lot more understanding for each other, but then they might also struggle in the same executive function area. So
like
they
no one picks up those balls.
They don't know how to do that. So like the principles are the same, but the supports and tools are a little different. But they both people work so hard, like they'll come in and they're working so hard, but with all the wrong stuff because that's all they're given. And it's so sad to see the impact that it has. And so I'm very glad that there's been a lot more awareness. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I'm like, it doesn't need to be this hard. Yeah. And I've really enjoyed working with couples that are coming in so much earlier. And it makes a difference. Like I was even rereading some of the scenarios in my book. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't even seen this in so long, because people come in way before things get so like hurtful, because that's what it is. It's, it's these two people who love each other. They're trying really hard, but yet they keep on poking each other in these really big wounds, and it kind of gets this eggshell feeling. So that is a very long way of saying that's how generally, especially for an ADHD male, because also then you're totally not conditioned or taught any of the other executive functioning roles, right? Of that people expect a lot more of childcare, the mental load, housekeeping, all the other things that are women's work, so then you already kind of have a disadvantage with that too. Emotional intelligence, relationship connection, all of those things. Yeah.
You're kind of on your own to seek out and to grow those things. It's not necessarily,
Yeah, like you're
intuitive
kind of, you're penalized for it as a male growing up for the most part.
I got a quick question. Of the 3 ADHD types, I have a guess on which you are, but I'm wondering if you tell me. I'm going to write it down.
Okay.
Which one are you?
Hyperactive.
Yeah, you're hyperactive and impulsive?
Yeah. I don't know.
Those go together? Isn't it inattentive is one, 2 is hyperactive and impulsive.
Change the whole criteria. Yeah. They do need to change the whole criteria. But yes, technically I am definitely in the hyperactive, which is more really, it's because I have more of an under-responsive sensory processing system. So I need more input, which is like that go, 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 Tigger, Energizer Bunny.
Oh, yeah.
I
got that.
Yeah, in order to kind of get that nutritional need of the sensory input for that. But yeah, no, I mean, I was the kid that was twirling around and doing gymnastics every second.
Moving your body all the time.
All the
Movement
time.
was medicine.
All the time.
Okay. When couples' second question is, what kind of tools do successful couples use?
So what I talk about, I break it down into 5 pillars in my book. And I like that because it gives a compass and guide. So you don't have to be like, okay, well, how do I do this and this and this and this? All these things that you have to memorize.
And we need lists.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I like a list.
Yeah. And yes, you get 5 easy things to remember. But they're really kind of these core principles. So one of them is growth mindset.
Oh, yeah.
That we talked about. The other one is praise, which can be controversial depending on how you were raised culturally and age. But unless you have a PDA profile, which is persistent demand for autonomy, or what it's technically called right now, pathological demand avoidance, praise really works.
Is that words of affirmation? Kind of from a love languages perspective?
Yeah. It praise. Okay, so I will say
you're
most people...
making no sounds. What is praise?
Well, the love languages. Oh, that one's that has a lot of controversy in that.
That's another subject.
Yeah, okay. That's another subject.
Well, what is praise?
So praise, most people don't even know what high quality. Yes, for example, validation could be it. It can be words of affirmation. I would say, okay, this is low quality praise. Good job. Yay, we did it. Woohoo! Right? Very generic.
To be specific with what it is someone did, to say when you did X, I felt Y, kind of a nonviolent communication approach to giving feedback.
That could be, that's feedback. But I think in the sense of when you're looking at, let's say, when you're looking at parenting, because you're a parent as well, what you're looking at when you're thinking of praising your child, what you're looking for is, specific.
Specificity.
Yes. Consistent and very repetitive, right? A lot of times. And your presence. And that it's also authentic. But the thing is, it's kind of I don't know, I have a young kid, and so Kung Fu Panda 4 is out. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that because it will date this or something like that. But it's in Kung Fu Panda 1 when they're training him and then they realize, oh, his brain works differently and he's motivated by food, right? What we call a dopa booster, right? And those types of things. And then all of a sudden he's transforms and all this other stuff. But having high quality praise is so important. And when I'm working with older couples or mid-age couples, you don't have to learn new skills. If you want to do it for your kids, that's great. But if good job works for you, you don't have to be stressing out about it.
Yeah.
But that leading with the positive. So when you come home and let's say the ADHDer, because there's 2 ways I see most of the time that ADHDers have learned strategies that work for them is they do one of 2 things. They either imagine this really positive experience. So they go and they clean the kitchen and they do all these things and all this other stuff, and they're imagining their partner coming home and having this great response. Or they have, oh my gosh, they're going to get so mad at me. This tends to be the more common one. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. All these other things, a lot of the stuff that they were probably given in their childhood experiences throughout life. They do that to stress themselves out enough to like kind of turn their brain on. But that has long-term side effects, right? Using stress, having high levels of like cortisol and the stress hormones and that type of thing. So when somebody comes home and you're thinking, okay, yes, I did such a great job. I worked so hard. And they're like, oh man, we didn't put these away again. Like that is so defeating. So having something which goes into that growth mindset, because you lead with the positive first, right?
That's what John Gottman said, the soft start.
Yeah. And so your part of that is like, oh my God, like, wow, this might have been like really, you put so much effort into this.
Or the hamburger.
Yeah.
Where you have the bun is positive and then you kind of put the meat is
well, I have I have a whole like ADHD communication guy that works really well for.
Is that in here?
No, it's too complicated to put in there, but it's in my courses. It is my courses because they do need to be fine-tuned because there's so many trauma responses in there. But what I'm talking about for high quality praise is like looking at what it is and being very specific and authentic. And that tends to go a long way, because when people are getting frustrated, it's like, oh my gosh, you left this out again, and ignoring all the other parts or starting off with that. Or even just that hello or this hug, it can be very physical too. Like your physical presence is really important.
Yeah.
But that's very reaffirming for that brain. And that is a great way. Like a lot of times that is the motivator, the dopa booster, right? The praise is the part. And so if you want something that's hard for an ADHD brain to do so, like where you're talking about these mundane, boring executive functioning tasks, giving that praise and recognizing those differences, that goes into the acknowledgement pillar that I talk about, because it is different.
Acknowledgement.
Like we are different, and our brains work differently. And so if you're wanting to do something hard, that reward is really important. There's this really big study, which I was like, when I started doing all the research, I was like, oh, this is why. There's a really important study that's talking about the default mode network. So the default mode network in ADHD brains doesn't turn off when the task network starts, right? And then so that's a little bit of like, this. If you have had a toddler, I think it's like, everybody's experience with a toddler. You can't do anything. You can't finish a full sentence. You can't do the dishes. You can't do anything before your kid either needs your attention or is putting themselves in danger, or having a breakdown because they wanted a green cup instead of a red cup, all these things. But that's like kind of what the ADHD brain does in these mundane tasks. The default mode network doesn't turn off, but for kids at least, because most of these studies are done in kids, so you apply them to adults, it did turn off when there was a high enough reward. And so you also see a lot of these high rewards. And that's also the interest base. We're also talking about intrinsic motivation. I'm not saying like, okay, give somebody like $5 every time they do something, or your kid. That is not what I'm saying at all. But that high reward, which is praise, that relationship part, that high quality, authentic praise.
It builds intimacy and connection, relatefulness. And
also it's just celebratory. So that's the thing, is like when we do something hard, we celebrate. We do like, my workshops will have like everyone do like their own little handshake or a dance or something, because you're building this skill in, instead of being like, you just shouldn't get that, or everybody shouldn't have a participation trophy, or whatever it is,
Celebrate yourself.
Yes, exactly. And it works so much better because you're working with your brain, and then also you're celebrating the things that are hard,
So growth, praise, acknowledgement. What are the other two?
Positive acceptance, right?
Positive acceptance.
And so that's just really humanistic psychology, of just loving somebody. But that's where boundaries come from.
That reminds me of like Carl Rogers' radical acceptance, or what he called unconditional positive regard.
Yep. That's where it comes from.
Or even Kristen Neff's self-compassion. It's like when you're down on yourself, like meet that with a lot of compassion, a lot of self-empathy.
Right. And so holding somebody else in positive regard means also, or positive acceptance, as I say, is like you're assuming good intent.
Yes.
Right? Like, you set out to say like, we are not trying to hurt each other.
Right.
And it's okay if things are different and challenging. So let's say one person struggles with time management, right? Like time is this very abstract concept. It tends to be something that's very challenging for ADHDers to manage. Setting those boundaries of saying like, hey, I get the fact that like this is going to be hard for you and this might always be hard. And when I work with relationships, you know, most of the boundaries that you work on, there's a whole way to kind of do that. But like first they come with a lot of supports, right? Of what am I going to do that is going to help support you in this that feels good? And then when I set my boundary of like, okay, like I talk about this in my book, I'm going to leave at this time with or without you for these types of events, right? It might be like
setting expectations, setting
clear, and you talk about it ahead of time because you're just saying like, it's okay. You know, like this is who you are and that's totally fine. Right. And there is an impact on me, but that's where the boundary comes in of saying like, I can love you and accept you and understand that we're all human. We all have things that we
setting and managing expectations, having clear defined boundaries. And when you enact those boundaries, it's not done from a place of anger or frustration. It's from a place of acceptance and like,
right. Hey, and you talk about it beforehand of just like, hey,
that's the setting and managing expectations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And managing and well-defined boundaries.
Like well, you know, and it's whatever the other person needs to hear. Yeah. That tends to be what they did not hear when they were a kid. So it's like, I love you no matter what. I know you're not trying to hurt me.
Yeah.
I did what I was supposed to do. I got to take care of myself, you know, and this is about me showing up for me so that way I can show
them being
up.
Bad. It's about me honoring myself and my boundaries.
Right. And this really helps. This is one of the most important things to get out of the parent-child dynamic where one person's over-functioning and then the other person starts under-functioning or is like kind of treated like a kid. And so that's where that comes out. And then games, which is just play and novelty.
That's the fifth pillar? Games.
Yeah. So games,
having fun and play.
Yeah. And that's really important. That tends to be the first thing that goes when you're stressed in a relationship. But it's a human need for everybody.
Games.
But for ADHD, you really need it. You need that novelty. You need that fun. You need that playfulness. And it's a great way to work through like trauma responses that tend to get in the way from that relational trauma. I call it the criticism filter. I mean, RSD is also one of those things where people are like, whoa, I just made an observation and now like you're being defensive or you're giving me this very long explanation of why you didn't pick up the one thing at the store or something. And it can be very confusing for people.
Yeah. Question 3.
Okay.
And I might go quickly through these because I'm looking at time and this is all so, it can be a little bit like drinking from a fire hydrant. You have so much knowledge and I want all of it. I'm like, I should take all these notes. And I'm glad that the book is here because I can read through the book.
Nice. And
there'll be opportunities to expose myself to your content in the future as well, as will everybody else. We're going to make sure everybody can find their way to you.
Perfect.
Third question is like, how did you find yourself? How did you make your way to this type of work, this way of contributing in the world?
So I think my relationship with my spouse is great. And I think that I've appreciated that plus all the other relationships in my life. And so I think that's why I was drawn more to couples counseling and also group work. Also, you know, hyperactive ADHD, like you like more things in the room, the more action, the more things, the more puzzle pieces, all those things to navigate, which can be overwhelming for a lot of therapists. So I was really drawn to that. And then because I had ADHD myself, I would say I grew up, I think, for the ADHD part in really great environments that not everyone gets. So
you mentioned your spouse. Did you get into this after you were married?
No, I mean, I was.
Did you study psychology when you were?
Yeah, I mean, I was with him, and we didn't get married until we had a kid. We did like a commitment ceremony because like same sex marriage wasn't legal when we did that.
Was there a time in your life when you're like, this is my purpose, this is my mission to kind of support folks with ADHD?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
You know, I think everybody's different. You know, when I was really into the couples counseling world, you know, like, and I was like, you know, reading all the books and trying to take all the courses from like Tatkin, Esther Perel, Sue Johnson, like, you know, I was ADHD fashion. I wanted to go everywhere. Terry Real. I was just like, I was like going to all their
Terrence
trainings.
Real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Terry Real.
Yeah. He's good for it. And they all bring something that's really important. I think it's great because I know how to refer out too, where I'm like, this would be the therapy the model that would probably work better for you.
So you were really into couples therapy.
So I was really into couples therapy. And then, for ADHD, when I became a mom, which now I understand why, that's where I was like, whoa, like I had a very ADHD great life. I didn't realize it at the time because even then, we didn't know that much. Like I think when I got my diagnosis, it was like, oh, you can try medicine or this, but there was no real explanation. There was not a lot of like executive functioning supports, none of those things. So anyways, like when I was struggling as a mom, which I now know a lot more reasons why that is, I was more going into like, okay, well, I need some extra help. Like this is what the heck, And so I went to some other trainings for ADHD at the same time that I was doing all these other things. I tried medicine for the first time, which I was like, oh, I could see how this would have been helpful.
Was this before you were a social worker, a licensed clinical?
No, I was a social worker
at this time.
At this time, yeah.
Quick question: when I hear a lot of like resonance in what you're sharing, and I'm wondering if your motivations were similar to mine. I found myself going deep into a lot of relational practices, some on a different track, like Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication, the John Gottman stuff on the science of trust and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Other folks, whether it's Dan Siegel, interpersonal neurobiology, that type of stuff. And when I look back on it, I was trying to fix myself in order to make a relationship work. Did you ever find that? Like, I feel I had this thought that like, oh, if I just learned the right tools, if I just found the right framework or the right workshop, something would click in my brain and this relationship would start working better. Aww.
I would say
you just awed me.
I know.
Oh my God.
But that's
so motherly.
It's when
Bombed me hard.
I just, my heart like just, breaks a little sometimes.
You never did that. I got a sense you never did that.
I don't think that was it for me. And I know when we go into that, I can explain more why. But I mean, it is that thing that there's something, this message that you got, that there's something fundamentally wrong with you. And if you can fix it, then everything will be okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that really goes back to a lot of like kind of childhood trauma where you get stuck in that kind of like, okay, if this fixes this, then this will go there.
Oh yeah. In my life, I've been trying to figure out for a long, long time what practice, what workshop, what idea, whether it was neuro-linguistic programming, DBT, CBT, like I've gone through. If you looked at my worksheet on these, it's extensive. You've done
a lot. Okay.
A ton.
Okay. Well, then if you take my stuff, I'd be super curious on how, because it's very different because it's very ADHD focused.
Yeah,
and it's like, all the learning, which I have to talk to a lot. I do a lot of like science and research of movement and being goofy and silly.
You didn't
for
get
the
in part
non-ADHD. Well, I think this is the thing. Like, I was maybe curious for other people in my life of why their relationships weren't working. I think I had some really great models, and I also had some very key people that were that's a protective factor. That like I was. I never was made to feel like less than and this is the other thing. Like, I think I have very rarely gone into neurotypical environments and worlds. Like, that's just not been my reality almost ever. So I have a very different experience where sometimes when I hear other things, I'm like, oh, like, or I go in these environments, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this, it's the opposite, right? I'm like, whoa, what's this world? This isn't fun. Why would I be here? So, I think in that way, I was lucky enough, and I think it's really important to share that too, because I do think, as people worry about their kids and all these other things, there's so many different ways that you can do all these protective factors so that these messages don't impact them. And that way you're really working with their brains and bodies and celebrating it. And that's the whole point of what I do, is like celebrating who you are, not you need to be fixed and you're the problem. That's like the crap that we're given, and it's not true.
Oh, I was the identified patient in the family. For sure.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I didn't realize it until you said that like earlier. I was like, oh yeah, that probably maps to being a de-identified patient.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then your family is like, okay, you're the one who's making all this
thing, and then the family's going to work out. And then oh yeah, no wonder I would think I need to fix myself, and then this relationship would work out. It's just what I was implanted from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Brats. Question 4. Man.
I like the fact that you want to connect. We're like, we have the same experience. But I do think that's the thing, is that when you're talking about these things, what I have seen that's better than individual therapy, right? Because in individual therapy, it's like you can get to this point. It's like, okay, now you have to do it with other people. It's like, okay, if they're too scared to do that, then it's like, okay, let's move to group therapy or these types of things. Yeah. But I think that, you only do so much in like an hour a week. And so if you're working with the people that you're living with, and you're having an ADHD affirming environment at your home and in your relationships, it's like, it fills you, and it's so life-changing. And so I like that. I like the fact of having more, or, of being able to support in a relational way, because I'm very systems oriented. I'm very environmental oriented, not like, you're the problem, so you got to fix yourself, and you just systems. Do these things.
Where acceptance.
And so I think working in that model is really important. And in the U.S. medical model, it's it's not as prevalent as like other countries that do like a lot more services for families and including them, and it makes a huge difference. And so I think that's why like I liked the couples work. I think because there was more of a dynamic there, and I also liked when. It doesn't mean that everybody gets this when they go to couples counseling or relationship counseling. It varies, especially on what you're bringing and where you're at and all these things. But like when you're getting these parts of you that are healed and seen, and that's my favorite thing, where it's just like they still want to keep coming, and I'm like, whoa, look at you! Like I'm just like, wow, look at this! This is great. This is that. I mean, like I love that. I love seeing things like click and change, and people just staying so connected in conflict. And I think that's so healing. Relationships are the key to so much, to everything.
We're intrinsically social beings.
I know, even though we're supposed to be do it all yourself here. I think
that's there's this American kind of cultural thing of independence, radical independence.
I know. We're so not relationally focused.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah. It's just, we have a lot of hurtful messages around relationships too, and all the things of how we idealize them. And, there's love conquers all and all the myths that go in there. But no, I think that there's lots of different reasons, but I think that was the main one. And then because of my own journey, I started learning a little bit more about ADHD, more stuff that I didn't really know. And then I was like, I need to start assessing for this in couples, right? And so I started assessing or adapting and tweaking it, because I searched. I'm like, okay, what is the couples counseling method for ADHD? And I couldn't find anything. This is like over a decade ago, and so so anyways, like I started tweaking things, and then I think more people start getting referred to me, and that's sort of how I just kind of came into this niche, because I was like bringing it into the practice before it was there. And I also really love preventative work, right? So I do premarital counseling because also I couldn't find a good one for us, like a non-religious one for me and my partner at the time. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I would see these people and I'm like, you don't need communication skills. You need like ADHD relationship skills. And that's where I started the ADHD Relationship Bootcamp and all those other things that really are more about changing your environment, staying in connection, getting these things versus talking about problems when it's a lot more about how do you embrace these 5 pillars that I talk about.
Yeah.
And so I think the combination of that was kind of was the driving force of the ADHD. Because I was like, this is so sad. It doesn't need to be this hard. And wanting to do all those things.
It seems so natural to bring in cognitive orientation into the discussion when couples or folks that are relating are asking for help. Mm-hmm. Having an awareness of, is one of them neurodivergent, or does one have ADHD, or does one of them have, that plays a huge role in who's trying to relate. And what are their struggles, or what has their experience been like
Right.
leading up to that point?
And I think adult ADHD is, it's not even really studied in most graduate programs like for kids. And I did used to work with kids, so I did get a lot more training in it. It is so dismissed, right? It's like normally it's like, oh, it's anxiety or depression, which it could be. There's a lot of like what we call morbidities, but like co-occurring illnesses and other
conditions. Yeah.
So.
Okay, speed round, because I want to have enough time for the learning about you. Do you have a morning routine? What is your morning routine, if you have one?
Well, it's around my kid.
Yeah.
So wake up. I normally kind of get the food going. I definitely get coffee.
Are you an early bird?
Having a kid, I never was, but like his internal clock is so great. My internal clock is matched with his. So like I get up probably about 6:15 every day.
But you didn't used to sleep in.
Oh, before kids, oh my gosh, I had no routine at all. It was fantastic and also very confusing to people, which I didn't realize why that would be confusing. But I mean, I always liked jobs that had flexibility so you could like, maximize fun.
Right.
But yeah, so my morning routine, I would say, is like very kid focused. It's like getting his stuff ready for school, lunch, that type of thing. I eat, I go work out, at like 7:30, and his dad takes him to school, and sometimes he joins me for the workout, sometimes he doesn't, and then I kind of come back and then just start my day, depending on what it is. So I have different modes to start up depending on what I'm doing. So if I'm just seeing clients, that's a very standard day. There isn't that much to prepare for. If I'm doing content creation or trainings or doing something else, I have my own system to kind of get my organization flowing and going.
Yeah. That's great. Question 5. Let's see. How does doing this type of work impact you?
Oh, I don't know if I think the last like 4 or 5 years have been so hard. I think there's a different impact that it would be normally. I think overall,
it's been so hard.
Yeah, I think, well, like the pandemic.
That's what I was thinking.
Pandemic, personal stuff that has happened in our family dynamics, with our family members, just so much horribleness, that's a huge list of all these things that either partly like I was shielded from, right, of privilege and those types of things, but also just like really, really hard stuff. So I think in the sense being in it sometimes is really hard. I remember, my husband's a software engineer, and I was just like, how do you guys just like go in and like, he's like, I want to write some letters and numbers and have something work, or it's like
the way a Muppet would do that job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
what he does. Like,
software engineers go
software
like this. Yeah, if I was one, I'd be like bouncing on a yoga ball, being like, boom, boom, there, all this stuff. Yeah.
It's up there. The buttons are up there.
But I think the thing is like sometimes, depending on what it is, and I was also treating at the time, a lot of ICU nurses, which is like really, really intense.
Oof.
So I think there's also this other part of, there used to be more like ebbs and flows with like collective trauma, but now it's just really, there doesn't seem to be a break. I mean, there are little breaks and ebbs and flows, but I think there is a harder impact of like having that be a job that has changed so drastically, from the first half of my career in this.
So there's a tidal wave of collective trauma that you're experiencing now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's been, I would say that. Because life is hard and other things are.
Life has always been hard.
Life is always hard, but there's like an information overload, right? We've
social media, the way we interact with devices, those types of things.
we see and hear all the horrible things in the world, not just in our local communities. And you feel free to cut this out too, because I don't know.
Probably won't cut anything out.
Politics and stuff like that. But like our political system has changed. Like you know, like the late stage capitalism, like all of this stuff, you know, I was watching on the spring break, I was watching the Hunger Games on the plane. I was like, oh gosh,
this is where we're
10
going.
years ago. And we're just like so close to it.
Oh
and it's just dystopian things, women's rights, like all of this stuff. Like,
oh yeah,
there's you know, and also too, just like, it's really hard. I think it's really hard. And climate change, all of these things where there's like real anxieties, like there's real anxiety in the world. And it's good. It's good to have anxiety because bad stuff is happening. And we want to be angry because it motivates us to get out of our comfort zone. And sometimes I'm like, why aren't more people angry? You know, like we should be, because there is a protective factor in all of this, but it is kind of nonstop. Like when you look at least for me, I think the last 5 or 6 years, it's just felt like very, very nonstop, without a lot of breaks. So I think this, in that way, like there's something that feels really good about providing support to others, because that's such a huge thing in a time of need. And I know a lot of people who were in the, you know, other careers, they're like, I want to do something that's more meaningful and all these types of things. And I think there's just this, you know, for a lot of therapists and people in the healthcare field, like a lot of burnout. And I think I definitely hit that a little bit and have, you know, taken some time to like recover and those types of things. But I mean, it's just hard. Midlife's hard. Life has been really hard for us this last year. And that's just like in our, you know, core unit. And so I think in some ways, like the job is great. And I think I get a lot out of it, is being able to learn in the things that I'm interested in, being able to apply it to my own life, you know, to make my relationship better, to be a better parent, to all of these things. And then also too, being annoyed by it, it's like, I'm going to say this and I know I shouldn't do it. Blah, 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 blah. You know, like have a little attitude. And then I'm like, okay, that wasn't respectful. Take a deep breath, like come back. So I think there's like another part of it too, or knowing a little bit more, you know, where it's just like sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I need to check in with my kid like every developmental stage to make sure he doesn't get stuck in this, which is a great thing, but it's also like another thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think like overall, I do really like, you know, getting to know other like experts in the area. I do really like to be able to train. I've started to do in-person trainings again, which is always my thing. I'm not really good at the technology part.
I love in-person training, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm all about movement and outdoors and all these things that are so important to the work that I do. And so I'm still kind of figuring out how to move everything online. And I do think I'm doing a good job, because I've never seen a good job done for ADHD.
Yeah.
Right? And if there is, I totally would love to know, because I'd love to see what it looks like.
Heck yeah.
And yeah, so I think that is I don't even know. That was a very complicated question for me, because I think there's just a lot of weight to my life and to the world. And
you did a great job. I think that's a great answer.
Okay.
That is the end of Phil Phails 5 questions.
Yay! What do we win?
Yeah. Celebration. Celebrate yourself. Woo-hoo. And how you feeling?
Good.
This is my favorite part, because I get to put down the pen and paper.
Perfect.
Which I was kind of using a little bit, but not much. And explore Anita Robertson in a more fluid way.
Okay.
And I start these with your 5th pillar games.
Yay!
I'd like to start by playing 2 games with you.
Perfect.
I've done a lot of improv in my life. That's been one of my kind of outlets, but also maybe a spiritual practice even too. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you 3 games and we can pick 2 of them.
Perfect.
To play. We could play Sound Ball,
okay,
Mirror Cat, or 1, 2, 3.
Well, the first 2 sound way more fun than 1, 2, 3.
They're all 3 fun.
Okay.
But yeah. I could like, we could play 1, 2, 3 and then change your mind on that. But which one of these 2 do you want to play?
Sound Ball? Mirror ball?
That's like,
sound game?
Did you not remember what it was, or you're uncomfortable with it?
No, I don't remember.
Sound ball, Mirror Cat.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
All right, sound
ball. We need to give 1, 2, 3 a better name, is what I'm hearing. Like,
yeah,
give it more like,
yeah,
funness in the name, like maybe an animal numbers. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
Let's play Sound Ball.
Yeah.
Okay. So in these games, oh yeah, you're ready.
Oh yeah.
There's a focus of the game. I've got it. Did you ever do theater?
Yeah, I've done theater and improv, so I think I've done this one before.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a focus of the game. I've got it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pass it. There's a sound and there's a gesture. Mm-hmm. And the way you say yes is by making the sound with your mouth and then doing the gesture with your body. And that's the way you say yes to it. The way you say and is by putting that sound and gesture down and then coming up with your own one and passing it back to me.
Perfect.
Okay?
Yep.
Ready? Mm-hmm. Woo.
Woo. Is that right?
Great.
Yeah.
Right,
okay.
Yeah.
Woo. Hey-ya.
Hey-ya. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. Do-do-do.
Do-do-do. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. Blue, 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 blue.
Blue, 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 blue.
Ding, dong, dong.
Ding, dong, dong. Okay, the next little level to this is noticing that certain sounds and gestures have an emotional quality to them. Like some sounds and gestures can be powerful. Like the had like a powerful energy to it.
Yeah.
And the had a little bit of like lightness. And there's some of them can have emotions with them. So I'll invite us to play around with those aspects, or at least bring our awareness to those aspects being present.
Cool.
Okay.
Love it.
Boing.
Boing.
What do the kids call that? We did a dab. We dabbed.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, that's sound ball.
Yeah, that's
Tons
fun.
of fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's play. Okay, we can either play 1, 2, or 3 or mirror ball. Mirror cat. Now I'm forgetting.
Okay, if 1, 2, and 3 is really fun, give me 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Even though it does sound kind of boring.
Boring.
Yeah.
Okay, let's change your mind if
All right.
we can.
Yes.
Okay. The beginning of it's not going to change your mind. Okay, there's 3 numbers. There's 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to cycle through them, the two
Okay.
of us.
All
I'll
right.
say 1, you say
2.
I'll say 3, you say
1,
I'll say 2,
3,
1,
2,
3,
1,
2.
3.
Okay,
Okay.
it's great.
Awesome.
Let's move on. No, I'm just kidding. So now we're going to go through 1, 2, 3, but I'll change one of those numbers to something else.
Okay.
Either a sound or a gesture, or a sound and a gesture.
Okay.
And then it will then forever be held in that space. And we will say that instead of the number.
Perfect.
So 1,
2, 1,
2, 1,
2, 1,
bing bong, 1,
bing bong, 1,
bing bong, 1,
bing bong.
Now you
1.
change 1. Well, no, let's start over. And then now both of us will be invited to change either the number when we feel like it.
Okay.
And at first we'll try to get something for each number, and then we can change them after we've kind of like solidified the 3. Maybe go back to 1,
Okay.
2, or 3. Well, yeah, let's go back to 1, 2, or 3 before we change it to another one.
Okay.
Okay, so
Sounds
1,
2,
3,
1,
2.
3.
Oh, you were thinking about coming up with a new
Yeah,
one?
I was, but I couldn't, so I just
you
went with
bailed
3.
on it.
I failed.
You just clear
Snap
your
just
mind.
that.
There's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1,
2,
Go, 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 go.
1,
2,
go, 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 go.
burp, 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 burp.
2,
Go, 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 go.
burp, 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 burp.
2,
Go, 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 go.
1. Wait.
You failed!
Ah,
Yay!
we failed. In improv, we celebrate failure.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I was like, okay, you're going to really like the main thing that I do with my couples. It's like, which I get some pushback from, but I'm like, try it because it works. Is that take a bow, you say I failed, or curtsy.
Failed. Yeah,
but then
we do that.
everybody gives you a round of applause, but you say you learned.
Yes.
Right? And so I did that when I used to run an outdoor nature immersion camp. I realized, I was like, oh gosh, I have these great overactive, young, probably at least 50% ADHD young adults who had a hard time letting me know if something didn't go quite to plan, which, you know, when you don't have any running water or electricity, you got to know those things. So that's where I came up with that game. And I do it with couples a lot and like families. And it's just so wonderful because it also gives you, it's like two things that it does is one, it helps you embrace failure, right? And I've done this in big trainings too, where everybody comes. It's just like the improv game. It's like you take a bow anytime you feel like you failed.
When you fail,
and you take a bow, and then everybody has to clap, but you have to say you learned. So so if you take a bow and say I failed.
Yes, I failed.
You learned. Bravo.
We do that in improv.
Yeah.
When anybody fails, we go, yeah, and we like celebrate it like it's the most like
I took it
awesome
from an improv,
things.
but I just kind of put the you learned in there because I want to remember that this is part of learning.
Okay,
right?
1,
2,
3,
la la la.
2.
Isn't that 1?
You were la 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 was 1.
I thought I was 3.
1,
2,
la la la.
1, la la la. I don't know. I think we both failed. We're learning. Yay!
We learned.
We learned. Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. So
The next part of this, we're going to learn about you.
Okay. Perfect.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
I like to start these at the beginning with Anita. Where were you born?
I was born in Houston, and then I came to Austin like a few weeks later.
So you, for all intents and purposes, you were kind of raised in Austin.
Yes and no. My parents got divorced, so my dad stayed here in Austin. So Austin always felt like a home base for me. And with my mom, we stayed here in Austin for a while and then kind of moved around a little bit and eventually ended up in Indiana. So I went to school in Indiana. Well, I went to school here and in Indiana, but, like middle school, high school stuff.
When did your folks get divorced?
Like when I was 5-ish.
You know, I have the same story. My folks got divorced probably before 5. And I've often thought, like, I wonder if that played into my ADHD because I wondered what kind of chemicals, what kind of experience my mom was having when you would normally be, like, nurturing and supporting a young child and a young family.
It can be very stressful.
Because the divorce is, like, the culmination of...
Well, divorce can be done well, right? And it can also be done very poorly.
But when your folks did it...
Oh, epic. This is why it's like, I feel like I learned negative learning, of what not to do.
Oh, I say that all the time. If you watch some of the other episodes, I say, the reason I'm a seeker, and a lot of the folks that I meet, I think are seekers too, is because I learned what not to do and never learned what to do. So I left knowing like, okay, that doesn't work. Now, where do I find models for what to do? Where's the path?
Yeah, most people actually, because it's not modeled in media, really healthy relationships and what that looks like, because it's not as exciting as the drama. But my parents got divorced, and it was, I'm sure ADHD contributed to it in retrospect. But yeah, it was not a great divorce.
Siblings?
Yes, I have one full brother and 2 half brothers, one from each parent.
Is your sibling, you have one full, is it older, younger?
I'm the oldest. I'm the only female and I'm the oldest.
The only female, you're holding the torch and you're the oldest is oftentimes the like, from a birth order perspective, they like are the good kid, they keep it together. They can sometimes be in cahoots with the parents because they like, they...
Yeah, I mean, I'm the more functional sibling in person. Yes, in the family unit in that way. So yeah, that is true. Female and oldest is definitely the combination for that, especially when your parents are not functioning because the divorce.
What's your earliest memory?
Oh, I have early. So this is interesting. So, gosh, I don't even remember the name. Sycamore trees, magnolia trees. There's trees here in North Austin, right? they had these huge branches. And so when my parents were together, I do have some really, really great memories. So that was like I got a really good foundation. So at least the first 3 years of my life were great. So my mom, I remember when my brother was born, he's 3 years younger than me. So we would go walking in the stroller, and I loved climbing up trees. My parents told me a story of like when I was 2, they couldn't find me, and I was like all the way at the top of this tree, and I couldn't get down. But we would walk along trees and I would climb up them. And so I was like probably 3 or 4, most likely 4 at this time. But I could never get down. So my mom would like leave my brother in the stroller or something, and she would always help me get down. I mean, so she's like, like in the sense of like being able to explore and freedom and all that stuff, it was great. So I remember like some of the parks and going over to some of our friends' houses, building forts, those types of things. But I remember climbing trees. And like as a parent or when I was older, I'm like, I was in people's yards. I was in people's front yards. And so they like, I'm like, oh gosh, like you couldn't do that now. Like, and I'm like, I wonder if anybody saw us. And it was like, what is this person doing abandoning a stroller with like an infant? And then there's like this toddler in the tree.
Like this cat toddler.
But it was so fun. I loved climbing trees. It was like the best thing ever. I was so happy. And my parents didn't freak out because I think they were just like, my dad told the story of like, when they finally found me, they were both like, stay calm, don't freak her out, like in that sense. And then it's like my mom just climbed up the tree and just got me down. And I was like, well, this is the greatest thing ever. Instead of the toddler that like throws things, I was just like the climber. Like I just climb up.
You're a climber.
But I never got shamed for it. I don't remember ever hearing like you can't climb in other people's yard or trees. It was just, I don't know. That is like one of my first memories of a lot of the green spaces. We always spent a lot of time outdoors, getting bit by fire ants and those types of things before the divorce happened.
Are you a rock climber now?
I used to rock climb. I have a lot of postpartum issues, physical postpartum issues, so that's probably never going to happen again.
There are tree climbers now. I've seen a YouTube where folks do, instead of rock climbing, they do like huge tree climbs that they rate in the same way.
That's cool. I mean, when I first went rock climbing, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my thing. I loved it. Yeah, I definitely loved that skiing. I think if I would have been able to, if I lived in some body of water doing that kite surfing, I was like, oh, that would have been like everything, because it's a sensory experience. Yeah. So of just like really enjoying that. But no, I don't rock climb anymore, but there's more and more gyms that allow you to do that in Austin, at least, that are pretty cool.
Oh yeah. When did you realize you were different?
So I don't think it was like okay, let me start over. I think I grew up in mostly neurodivergent environments. Like, I don't know if I truly felt different. I think I felt like some things that were hard, but I always associated them with the divorce. And like my schooling environments, probably a lot of them were like all ADHD. There were like magnet schools and performing arts. We didn't have sports. We all were like in show choir and band together. So I think most of my friends, almost everyone I know now realizes they have ADHD, So I don't think I ever felt really that different. And when I am in those environments, I'm like, what is this? And then I'm just like, well, this isn't for me necessarily. Mm-hmm. I think I felt more of like the relational pain of seeing my parents not do well. And kind of also being lost in their own stuff versus like what we were needing, that big shift of it being very much about us to kind of getting lost in it. So I think that's more of the part that maybe feel a little bit different or a little bit othered, but not necessarily for my brain. Because like I said, the only like neurotypical person that I know of is my stepfather, and he was like not the greatest person. So like I've never really associated that type of, I don't think I've really witnessed that much type of functioning of the person who has everything together and does all the other things or whatever it is. Like we've just rolled differently.
So your mom and dad were atypical neuro.
I'm sure they both had ADHD.
Yeah,
They both definitely did. I mean, and I don't really want to. I guess it's hard because it's like you don't want to share something that's not diagnosed or not even your information. But ADHD traits run really strong in my family, and I think I had some very excellent models, both in relationships and also supports in my life that I think were super helpful for me as a person to not have so much of that trauma that's associated with ADHD, which isn't about having ADHD. It's about having ADHD in a toxic, harmful environment.
Right.
Right. And so like, I think overall, even in college, like I went to University of Rochester and somehow I chose the school that like you only have one class that you have to take and you just follow your interests. Like I have the most, all my classes is like, I study something new every single year. Like it was great, So like I didn't have these environments that I think are really challenging for ADHDers where you have to do these boring things. You have to do all this stuff. I had models of what an ADHD affirming life could look like. And I loved those people and they were awesome. And I just went and followed in their footsteps. And when you are in those environments, you tend to be around mostly neurodivergent people. And I also did like theater and speech club. I also did the dance team. So like, you're talking about a lot of groups and a lot of protective factors where, I'm not necessarily feeling so different than everybody else. And when you look at it, that is a huge protective factor of having like an ADHD friend or a friend that you relate to. And I always had a friend. I don't remember ever not. Obviously like everybody struggles with like friendships and relationships in some form and figuring them out. But I always had a friend, And so like even sometimes I read some journals and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I did have those feelings, but it never stuck because I was always in it with somebody. And I always had very great mentors and great supports that kind of helped process it or affirm or these other supports. So like I don't really feel like any of those things stuck with me. And even like as I'm going through challenging times where my systems and my supports kind of fail. And so it's like, oh, I'm kind of going back to some of the things that like stereotypically are challenging or you get negative feedback for ADHD. But I never feel like, oh, why can't I don't have any of that internal like negative talk. Cause I also don't think, I never witnessed that like in those foundational moments. Like I see it.
How?
I see it.
How did that happen?
Because everybody had ADHD in my family, I think. Like,
but then you also had to like find places out in the world that were accepting.
But okay, so like my uncle, for example, he did Outward Bound. He like, so I did Outward Bound as a kid. So I did a lot of outdoor adventure. My grandmother in the area that they lived had tons of land and it was just like go out and explore, come back when you're hungry. A lot of physical activity, a lot of outdoor activity, a lot of the groups that I was in.
There were community too.
Right.
There was people that you could do it with.
Yeah, and my grandparents too. It's just like, they left the country, the U.S., when they were like maybe 45. And they've traveled around the world so many times. And they were just so beloved. And listening to them, my grandfather died almost 2 years ago. And so when I was at his memorial, I was hearing about his life way before I was even born. And I was like, okay, wow. Like my grandpa was really... He was in demand. His attention was in demand. I never knew that, because I always, my grandparents were like the best grandparents on both sides, especially because like my parents were struggling with the divorce. So like they really swooped in and were like the most amazing people. And so, but yeah, so I was hearing
like
about these stories.
Emotions right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It totally is.
What's coming up for you?
Oh, it's just that love and appreciation for them.
Your grandfather, your grandparents. I felt envy and a tenderness too, feeling like, goodness, that must have been wonderful, and how important community is, and how important. Yeah, I remember when my parents got divorced. I think no one really swooped in, and I think my mom had to go back to a real cycle of violence before she could find another cycle of violence to get out of that one.
Oh gosh, that's a lot. That is intense.
And how wonderful it must have been to have a nurturing, a loving, kind of engaged family story.
Yeah.
Your grandparents, and it seems like they gave of themselves completely.
I mean, I am still impressed. Like I remember when we were little, because we went up in the pandemic to be closer with them. And I was like, remembering like a trip with the Smoky Mountains. And, my kid is I love him, but it's hard. It's hard to be a parent sometimes. It's
hard to be a parent.
And I was like, I can't believe you guys took both of us. Like, I think my brother was like three or four or something to the Smoky Mountains. And I remember that trip so much. And they took us on all these trips and I spent a lot of time with them. You know, anytime I lived abroad, they're the first people that visit. They're my favorite travelers. But when I was learning about my grandpa, right, you know, there was so much to his story. And I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are like the original influencers of doing the van life and doing all these things and these adventures. And I saw a whole bunch of cousins from my grandpa's side that I hadn't seen. And all of them have ADHD too. And I'm like, oh, well, this makes sense. Like my grandpa, this is probably like the model of a neurodiverse, like ADHD, non-ADHD relationship I have. And I love my grandparents' relationship. You know, they always adored each other. They spoke respectfully of each other. Even there's a few times where like, I remember being surprised where it was like, my grandpa's like, oh, I wish my grandma wouldn't do this because she would just take off like and just be exploring and like leave us waiting for forever. And
which one was your grandma? Was the one that had?
She totally had
those
totally
type of behaviors.
She does, but she's so fantastic. I went up for her birthday in November, and you know, I was trying to capture more of her stories on film, which I wish I would have done with my grandpa.
Heck yeah,
and even with my grandma, but you know. She also came from an interesting family. Like it was cool because I was hearing more of these stories where, you know, she was like the first female president in her class because like the draft was going on. And so like the male president and then all the drama around it. And then they're like, you know, I'm going to talk to your mom. And then my uncle's like, hoo. And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Who is this like, you know,
this powerful, strong,
right.
Yeah.
Which I remember in a nursing home visiting, you know, like, like this thing of how my grandmother, and she said this to me, she was like, oh, you know, I always did feel a little different, but she embraced her differences, and I am like a miniature her. And so like that quirkiness or that uniqueness or all the other things, and like they lived a life where they were very connected with people, very much adored and appreciated, a life of adventure. Like they're still my ultimate favorite travelers.
Wonderful role
Even
models.
though like my grandma, you know, the last international trip they did was coming to me with my husband's family in Mexico, and my grandmother like just walked out of a museum because she's just like, I want to go exploring, no cell phone, she doesn't know how to use it, and just like we're just like, okay, you know. But she's still always moving, she's always exploring, very curious, very connected, even though some of her memory is fading. Like she still remembers where I'm traveling to, or is just so engaged and
connected with you.
Yeah, and I think that's hard because it's like, you know, my grandfather died. My grandmother's nearing her end, even though I feel very good about the goodbyes and everything. But yeah, there's something that's so important of being adored, of being embraced, of being joyful and playful. And they knew how to have a good environment that worked for us.
About getting attention, having the attention of adults.
Yeah, and undivided, especially when they were so into
investment. These are investments.
Yeah, and it's just the thing. My grandparents loved us. I looked at all these pictures, you know, and I was just like, yeah, this is my grandpa and my grandma's face is like attentive and in love and just like celebratory. And my grandmother was always teaching, and she taught English to a whole bunch of other people. She was a very good teacher because she also was like a working mom too. Like she didn't want to do anything that she was supposed to do, right? So, I mean, I always wonder what she would have been like later on in life when women have more accessibility. But she was just a very big pioneer in that way. So I think there's also something too that I was modeled because she would laugh at everything. They're like, oh, you know, so I heard stories in the family of like, oh, you know, Donna Lou, like, oh, you know, one time she went and she straightened a painting in a museum and all of the things went on and all these other things. And she'd just be like laughing, or I think, was it in Kenya? I don't remember. She didn't get one of the vaccines. And so she got quarantined, and she was still like, just be like, you know, old lady, like walking off. Life. Yeah. Like everything walking off and just like do, and they'll chase her down, and she just would laugh. And so I think that laughter and that embrace and the, you know, like just, it's okay to be a little different. And I didn't even realize that was different because those were like my people, you know? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think they along with several other people were a really big impact. And I think that's also important because while things in the immediate situation weren't great, like there was so much other extra supports that I can reflectively say like were definitely the things that helped me be who I am without, carrying so much of the load that tends to happen when you have a lot of trauma, a lot of family dysfunction, a lot of like these really harmful things.
Well, you had that to some extent in the divorce. How do you come out of a divorced family with all the challenges and tensions? And, as kids, we are aware of the tensions that precipitate divorce, and we're aware of.
Yeah, I think my training started very early in human behavior and trying to figure it out. But I did a lot of therapy around that, like
later on
as a kid, and then also later on.
Oh, you were doing therapy during the divorce, or?
Yeah, we had court mandated therapy, and I just remember kind of playing with dolls.
Did you have to choose? Your parent, which parent to go with?
No, we were too young for that. I don't remember. I think, it's normally a teenager if you have a say in it. But I think
sometimes they'll ask the kids really young what their preferences are.
If they did, I don't really remember.
Yeah.
A lot of those things are blurs in some ways. But I think, there was a lot of processing that in my early 20s that I think I did a lot more of. And I think there's always bits and pieces that make sense. Or when you're a parent, you're doing a lot of reparenting. You're doing a lot of learning and understanding of like, oh my goodness, I was this age when you look at your kid when all this happened. Like, oh my gosh,
way too young.
Yeah,
to be navigating those storms.
Yeah. But I do. And I think that's one of the reasons I did like therapy, because I felt like it was very helpful in, I guess, like kind of coming to my own peace, setting my own boundaries, and choosing a life that worked for me around all of that. And that's part of that, like kind of positive acceptance is like you love people for who they are, but then you set boundaries around that. And that helps, I think, enjoy the parts of them that you can enjoy versus like trying to control or change or do all these other things.
Yep.
And so like I had a lot of that as like a kid, because I definitely wanted my parents to be more functional, because then they would be more functional parents. It's kind of how we're wired. And I don't want it to just be like all the stuff about the divorce. Like there was great aspects in there too. Like my mom always wanted to be a dancer, and so I always got to do dancing and like horseback, like a lot of great sensory activities.
You went with your mom?
Yeah. This is the 80s,
Yeah,
like,
everybody goes with the mom.
Yeah. But I did, my dad, and he was very present, with us when we came down here. And
so you would come for summers to see your
dad?
Summers,
winters, like those breaks.
Did he have the same type of communities where you had neurodivergent people and do the outside stuff, or was it different between your dad's and your mom's side?
I guess I haven't really reflected that much on like those communities. Like one of my dad's mentees, who's like an older brother to me, because I worked at my dad's company for a little bit when I was like in the summers as a teenager, because I wanted to work. And so that's when he started. But he is a nomad, has created like.
Your dad is?
No, this person that was part of my community, I guess, like
on
my
dad's side.
Yeah, who's like he became like family. He was like kind of like to us, and so he always encouraged me to study abroad, all the different music. Like he created a different lifestyle where he's like, okay, I figured out how to work 6 months on, and then 6 months I travel and would do these different things. So I had, I guess, examples of people who don't live traditional lives.
Right. And thrive.
And thrive. Right. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, that sounds exciting.
How do you do
let's
it?
do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to study abroad because so-and-so told me to. But I think my dad was really good at bringing people together and planning and making things feel very, very special. And so there he had that magic, I can see it in my kid. He loves big reactions from people. Mm-hmm. And you get this with a lot of ADHD kids there's a variety of reasons of why they like the big reaction. But for him, I'm reinforcing the positive ways my kid can get a big reaction. Like he likes to do magic shows because it's, the big surprise and all this other stuff.
Shows, yeah.
Yeah, so he'll do magic shows. But then also, you can or he'll do surprises or, like, ooh, boo. But you can also get it by like annoying people and like pinching them and poking them. And
you can like rile up the dog.
Yeah.
Or you can play ball with the dog. There's different ways to get excitement or to get the kind of level of engagement that you're looking for.
Right.
What kind of job did your dad do?
So in the end, he ended up doing like 401k stuff. Like he started a company that got like bought way back when.
401k stuff?
Like retirement investments and those types of things. That's what he ended up doing. And then he had a variety of professions before that.
He kind of was finding his way before that?
Yeah, I mean, he had a whole bunch of different, I think, careers and like, but he was always very smart. Like I think my dad got bullied and picked on, as a kid, because he grew up in LA, but he was always known for his intelligence, and he was same. He died recently, and sorry. Thank you. And at the memorial, that's like there's the magic, like because in the intelligence, but he was always everybody's like, oh, your dad's so smart.
Why do you think he was bullied and picked on?
Oh, probably because he was different. He was.
Well, no, I mean like. You weren't there when he was bullied or picked on. Did he tell you stories of that, or was it in his personality? He seemed like he was maybe more meek, or
no, I wouldn't say. Well, I mean, he wasn't like the super macho person,
right.
Like of the traditional male. So I think because of I mean, I don't really know why, but I'm assuming there's probably because his brain is a little different. But there is this. A lot of times you have this like internalized shame or that you're not worthy. And I think that I've seen that in multiple people in my family, not everybody.
You saw the signature of that.
But yeah, that there's nothing that you can really do about it. It's just kind of like that imprint that you wish somebody didn't have to carry so much, because there's a lot of sometimes like that self-harm or infliction in different ways. But he was really great at like planning and making things special. He was really great at giving, like he loved everybody's face, like he loved like creating these magical moments, creating these beautiful dinners, like the things that like ADHDers are really good at. Like cooking can be one of those. Cooking and traveling are one of those ones you either love it or you hate it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many executive functioning steps. But like my dad loved to cook. And he was an excellent cook. So I definitely learned how to cook from him. But that's the thing. It's just like having these, people over and, he'd tell everything about the meal and everybody would be like, oh, this is so good.
He would deep dive into stuff.
Oh, he would deep dive into those things and planning trips. Like we just got back from Disney, which he loved and grew up with. And so we're honoring him. And like my husband's like, oh, I wish, because I was like, this isn't even what my dad, like this isn't even to the level of what
What's
I
his
did.
name?
Ken did for us, of these moments. And I'm trying to share them with my kid. And sometimes he gets it and sometimes he doesn't because he's 7. He's like, because I'm like, well, this is what we did as a family. And this is where I celebrated my birthday. And he's like, well, but he's dead. So like, what's the point? Like my husband,
oh my goodness.
I was just like, it's like, okay, very appropriate for like a 7-year-old, but of all these things.
He doesn't understand the sentimentality that or the ritual, this thing that you're wanting to
these
bring.
Things, or like wanting to keep the memory alive, or these other
Ken's
really
memory.
Positive things.
Yeah. What about your mom? What did she do for a living?
So my mom was a minister.
I don't want to go too fast. It seems I see glassiness in your eyes, and it's okay for us to feel emotion for Ken for a minute.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. No, we've had a lot of death recently in our family, so there is a lot of sadness.
Maybe take a moment for Ken and all the folks that you've lost recently.
Okay.
It's gotta be hard for you and your family.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oof. Dying in Texas, do not recommend. Learned a lot. It's a whole other thing.
Dying in Texas?
Yep, ADHD torture. Or I probably shouldn't say that word, but like challenge, a very big ADHD bureaucracy challenge.
I had doing philosophy stuff yesterday with Grant Potts, and we're going through some of these big questions, and in the middle of this discussion about whether or not reality has a ground, I was struck by the desire to not die. And I just started crying. And it's this impermanence is hard.
Yeah, especially when you're a parent, because it's like it impacts when you have young kids, especially. I mean, at any age, but really when you have a young kid. And I think that's the other part of like midlife that's really hard. Even though I'm still mostly focused on relationships and those types of things, I have as like my own coping, like done a lot for like midlife, ADHD and grief, ADHD and like midlife and executive functioning. Because I'm like, this is one, there's not as much stuff out there. At least I haven't found. And I've asked like other experts in the community and they haven't really known of that much. So like, but it is a hard stage of life. And we've had a lot of like hard stuff in succession, which doesn't always happen. And a lot of really great relationship supports and that type of thing. But yeah, like, oh my goodness. I have on my website a blog with just like all the institutions and all the reasons why they're hard for ADHD. I had to graph it out. I had to mark it all up of like what you have to deal with. Because it's like whether it's, you know, sick parents or like when you start hitting your midlife too, it's like you might have health implications or your friends, you know, like.
How old are you?
I am 42.
46. We're around the same time. And I'm feeling some of that stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really challenging. And I think this for me is the hardest stage of ADHD, right? Because I'm like trapped. Maybe this is the thing. Like I don't necessarily feel different, but I do feel trapped in these like places that I have to deal with that are not my strong suit.
Yep.
Right? Like I still have to call the Social Security office again because they like all this stuff. Like it's just so
bureaucracy.
Yeah. Or filling out the forms wrong, dealing with mail.
Yeah.
Like all this mail.
Oh my God.
Why? All the things that you do have to manage, or if you're lucky enough, you can contract them out. But like that's not very few people get to do that. But yeah, I find this stage of life super hard for all those things. But I do think, yeah, like, and that's part of it, confronting your mortality, right? COVID did that, losses do that, all the other things kind of do that. And then when you have a young kid, it's extra, extra hard.
Yeah. I think. Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, I've definitely learned a lot in that, and we need to get our stuff together because I'm like, oh, okay, I understand. Now I understand what all these differences are with estate planning and all these things. So I've gathered some handouts and some resources for it because I have found like being in community, especially with other ADHDers and families, because the family dynamic is so different, I think, as well. Yeah. Has been really helpful, I think, in processing it. And so it's kind of like my own little side, I guess, hyper-focused, but it's more about figuring out these tools that I need and what's working for me and hopefully giving to others because it's like, this is hard enough. And if you look at grief, that's almost everything that's created is like because it was too hard for them after a loss, and so people do it better. And I think death and loss, even though the U.S. doesn't do it very well, we don't have a lot of really great supports. We get a lot of harmful messages around it. But there are a lot of great organizations like the Christie Center, which is here in Austin, and other places that really, you know, the way that they cope with the grief is also this giving. You know, everything's free, everything's shared, this very big community where you go and you show up and you know, you're sad together and you get it together, or you have all these great resources and handouts and those types of things. So like in that way, because I think it's extra challenging when you have ADHD and the systems are really hard for us. And then when you're talking about what you're talking about of like this kind of, I'm the problem, like there's something wrong with me. A lot of times you reject help. It's scary for you to ask for receive help.
Because the world is that way.
Yeah, because you've been rejected.
That fixed mindset gives you this. What comes up as you're talking, and I want to make sure to get back to your mom's side and what she did for a living. But I think part of this whole thing is I need to find community. I need to find folks that neurodivergent, like panacea that you're describing. I'm just like, I need to find the 46-year-old version of that. Cause
like in the improv classes, did you find that? Because I find that tends to be so that's what I'm talking about. Like, and if you have glimmers of that, that's all you really need to know, and then follow that. And I think there is this, depending on, and I see this for a lot more in women, and also like, or if you're the one person in your family that has ADHD and nobody else does, which can happen, especially if like one parent isn't in the picture and you kind of like remarrying, those types of things, is that, that sense of differentness, or otherness, or, or the rejection of all your quirks versus like the celebration and normalization of them. But I think those are...
I think what I mean when I talk about community, a lot of those communities I found are places I go and I leave, and there's no intimate relationships that like follow me home. Oh, like you like go to it, you do the thing, and you leave, and then I would like to leave those with deep connections that I talk to on the phone, or they like come over to visit, or like we do things together. And what I've found is the older that I've gotten, the harder it's been. And it was really hard when I was a kid, but it's gotten even harder now to harvest deep, meaningful connections from things that I do out in the world.
Yeah. And I also find, too, that a lot of times when I've worked with adults, especially male adults, that like nobody ever explained relationships to you, like in the sense of breaking it down to this level, that like stuff I used to do with kids at school of kind of explaining how do you, what are the kind of steps of relationships, or all the different types of relationships, like how to know what to expect, how to know how to take care of yourself, right? Like if somebody's not telling you the truth all the time, is that somebody you want to continue investing in, or is there somebody else? Like all those things, like that wasn't necessarily broken down and explained in a way, and that it makes it harder to kind of take those relationships home, right? Versus like when you do sometimes get that support, it's easier. It's almost like you're kind of learning how to make friends, but then you're also learning how to make friends, and it's easier in those neurodivergent communities. But you might encounter like, well, I don't know how to say like, hey, let's hang out, and the other person might not, and so you don't know how to carry that home. It sounds like that you found it here, because I do think Austin, or at least like the older Austin, has a lot of that, has a lot of the arts, has a lot of different groups, the social bike ride. Like it is a really
Thursday social bike ride.
It's like a really easy, friendly city to integrate into, but we like lose that, especially as we get older sometimes.
There might be some weird way that I'm navigating that. What did your mom do? Back to that.
So, I mean, she worked for a little bit, but she mostly ended up staying at home when she remarried and had another child.
It's like a stay-at-home mom?
Yeah.
So it was like a breadwinner type of household where your mom was at home and the husband was kind of like taking care of, like the classic.
The classic of gender norms and those types of things where like she definitely struggled with, keeping the house clean or those types of things. But like in my brain, I'm like, well, this is stupid and not okay. And like, I was kind of like more of the advocator. I don't know. I took on a lot of roles as a kid.
What was stupid? You said this is stupid.
Oh, to me, that's what I thought. Like, why would you like stress so much about like cleaning? My stepfather was in the military too, where it's like, like if there's dirt or something, or
that must have been a
strict
like household.
In some ways, yeah. But I think like those are the ways that I'm just like, this doesn't work. In retrospect too, I'm just like, wow. I think this was also parenting guidelines, but of like point systems and these rewards, and like me and my brother never figured out how to clean our room. We were never taught, we really never taught. And then my brother, I like looked at it, I was like, how did you do that? And he's like, basically he shoved everything like in the drawers and in the bed. And I was like, brilliant, But like my mom never really knew either. It's just kind of this stuff that's like passed down. My grandmother's really good at it for some reason, but we always were traveling. So I never really lived. I did live with them. We did live with them for a while as a kid, and that was fantastic.
You were always traveling?
Like with my grandparents, we were always traveling. They loved to travel. do new things and do new adventures. And I did like, as a kid, that was a really good memory of living.
Well, you would
with my
like go and
grandparents.
spend months with them or weeks with them?
No. I mean, sometime after my parents divorced, my mom lived with my grandparents, which probably was not great. You know, that would be hard, I think, as a parent. Maybe, I don't know. I loved it. It was great. I remember so much of mostly the quality time with my grandma. I think my grandpa was working a lot. So because he was a minister and so they moved, and always very predominant in the community and that type of thing.
He was a minister.
Yeah. And it's just a whole lot of PKs, as you call them, preacher's kids.
Was that PKs?
Preacher's kids.
Preacher's kids.
Yeah. But I do, those, like, I definitely remember that time as, like, being really fun. Because I just like the memories of my grandma, right? Of, like, learning how to garden, or she would point out all the nature, or, like, we saw these bird laying their eggs and we would watch them, you know? And it's just, she was a natural teacher, and she was a great grandparent for sure.
Yeah, your grandma.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Donna Lou.
Donna Lou.
Yeah. Yeah. And so.
And that must have been challenging for your mom. How did she end up transitioning out of that?
I mean, honestly, I don't really know. I was a kid.
You were real young.
Yeah, I was a kid, and those things, like, you know, and even if I have a story, it may or may not be accurate. Because like those types of things, I do remember a lot of different things. But then when I was like in late elementary school, she did remarry, or she started dating the person and then remarry, and that kind of changed because we did. I know, like, there was another family that lived with us for a while, which was really fun because they also had 2 kids the same age as us. You know, like, that was great.
Hey, you had more kids.
Yeah,
more kids.
Play. We had a huge yard.
More
like, there was
play.
a lot of, it was a lot of playtime. And my brother and I definitely did a lot of imagination play together. Like, I still remember a lot of the games and stuff that we did.
Yeah.
And he was definitely a lot more introverted than I was. I was the extrovert in a family of introverts. My grandma is the extrovert in a family of introverts. So, like, I loved her because, like, we would just be going and doing stuff and meeting new people, and everybody's exciting and all the other things. And so, so I kind of remember, because when we moved up to Indiana, that's where my grandparents were living. So I spent a lot of time with them, even after like we moved out of their house.
Yeah, because your mom remarried and stayed there.
Yeah, like, it was still, they were in South Bend and we were in, like, Fort Wayne, Indiana. So it's still a couple hours. But, like, I remember my grandpa, they had this van, and my grandmother was like, you know, she created her own little toilet so they didn't have to stop. You know, efficiency. We're very good at efficiency when there's fun.
Yeah.
Same as, like, this trip that we just did
efficiency.
with, like, fun efficiency. You know, it's like the reward, the interest. Like, we can do it. Our Kung Fu Panda give us our little dopa booster, and we can do anything.
Yeah.
You know, because my kid, I was like, oh man, like, you are on top of it. I guess you can do everything if it's like Disney World and it's all like geared fun things of like waking up early, of brushing your teeth, of getting
make it fun, make it exciting.
But that's where you learn those executive functioning skills the best. That's why, like, so much of the work that I do with couples is really like play based. Like, you teach a skill, you play a game, you do a challenge, and you practice it.
Well, because if you follow passion, you follow excitement, you're going to learn, and those things are going to be, right? It's that idea that if you couple an experience with an emotion, it's more readily available or multi-accessible within your cognition, right? If it's this emotion tied to this time, tied to this experience, you've got all those different ways to access it.
Yeah. And you're kind of, you're relaying a new foundation. And so, like, and then, and that way, when you get flooded or angry and you go back to, like, what you normally do, which is generally not the most supportive way, a lot of times people didn't know, you know, it's a skill. Communication's a skill. Emotional regulation's a skill. It's just like math. Like, they're all kind of skills and learning and practice. But
man, I did not get those skills.
Yeah.
I think I'm glad there's social and emotional learning now.
I know. Yeah,
SEL in schools has been, you know, great.
And so, but that's what it's like. It's learning in an ADHD friendly environment. So, like, when I did all my in-person stuff, you know, because like I said, like my uncle worked for Outward Bound, and so I got to do all this like outdoor adventure where it's just like you're learning and it's part of failing and there's consequences and all this other stuff. But it's a great way to build like executive functioning skills. It's a great way to learn about life. And when I ran a nature immersion camp for several years, the backpacking overnight for the 8th and 9th graders, that was always like the thing that they were like, oh, this is so hard. But like everything, that was the moment that like transformed them.
Yeah.
Because there's something about being independent. There's something about the opportunity to fail. There's something about being able to like do something you didn't think of and build this community, right? That like is part of that journey, right? Of developmental adolescence. And then my uncle did a lot of, you know, for Outward Bound, they moved into like some corporate training and stuff. So he always did great trainings and like team building. And so those are the things that I loved. So it's like I take a lot of that, like camp, all the experiences that I had, and that's what I kind of use for these relationships, like the information where it's ADHD is not necessarily like a lack of information. It's like, how do you implement it?
Right.
Right. And so practicing it in this kind of game way, practicing it in this way where even the games we played, like that's good for working memory, right? These are all things and skills. Or when I work with my kid, when we always embrace failure, we talk about our struggles. We're excited about them, even though he hasn't fully embraced it yet. Like that's the message that we're giving, right? That there is no such thing as perfection, and that like if he's struggling in something, like we're not going to be angry. That's our responsibility to help him through that. It's
part of those pillars, that growth
and learn
mindset,
and grow,
and the praise and games. Mm-hmm. What was discipline like for you growing up on your dad's side and your mom's side?
I mean, I don't think my dad had much discipline. He felt really bad about the divorce. He felt really bad about what we went through. And so we had a very, I guess, low demand household that was really fun and curated and, wasn't throughout the whole year.
Low demand household. You mean like there's a lot of freedom for you?
Yeah. If you've heard of like low demand parenting.
Mm-mm. What is that?
Just like there's not a lot of demands
on the kids.
Yeah, of kind of looking at it as like spoon theory or something like that. Like, and I see this for my kid and I see this for myself. Like I could like go and do fun stuff all the time. But like sometimes like it's the showering, the brushing your teeth, the filling out the forms, like those things I've learned that like I can do them and get to the fun part, right? Which is like, so you could look, now we have to apply this for other things. After our last Disney trip, which even when we took him there when he was 2, like he didn't want to leave the hotel and play his Play-Doh. And I'm like, kid, you will love this. Like, and then the next day he's like with his dad, he's like, here's your shoes. Here's this. Like 2.5 is like, he got it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I totally lost my train of thought.
So there wasn't a lot of stuff going on at your dad's house.
Oh, yeah. Low demand.
Where discipline would be required.
Right. And I think, and so like kind of in this way of when people are talking about low demand parenting, I was like, oh, I think I've kind of had a low demand lifestyle, but that's also because I don't have this internal voice of I should be doing all these other things. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do you minimize the things that are harder for you? How do you get supports to be able to do them, to make them tolerable, mm-hmm. right? And then knowing where to put your energy, like what fills you up, what are your needs, like basic needs to be functional. And I think that's a huge part. So I would say like my dad, like I wouldn't, no discipline, just love and fun. And then with my stepfather, there was a lot of strictness. And that felt very suffocating. That didn't feel very good.
What was it like? What kind of discipline?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Spanking? Did you get spanked?
Yeah, we did. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't like we got beat or anything like that. No. But yeah, that's part of it.
I got spanked. I mean,
yeah, and I think by the time I was so much older, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like I think if you're a kid, when I see a kid, little kid, like that is like a very big fear response. But I never got spanked until, at least I remember until like he came around. But so that didn't really do anything for me. It was just annoying, but like it was also short. Like, spanked with what? It wasn't like I got beat. It was right. Okay. It felt dumb.
What would you get spanked for?
I have no clue.
You don't remember?
But I remember points. So like
You get points if your room was clean, or you get points if you did the dishes or
demerits or something like that. And like we were always in the negative, and my brother was always in more negative. I don't know. Nothing that they did, I think, very much worked. Because I do remember we had a lot of things like taken away, but then I was like, okay, whatever, I don't care.
You didn't care.
Well, that's like the only way you can protect yourself, right?
Yeah, like giving away, releasing attachment to it, then they don't control you. Right,
of all of those things. So like, I think in that way, there was, like I said, there was like some positive and negatives in my environment. I don't describe that part of my life as like great, but I did have a lot of other people outside of that were really great. I had some really great friends, which now we all realize, I was like, oh, we all come from very broken homes in different ways with a lot of similarities in high school. And then we all like kind of came into another family, right? It was like, I stayed with them when I went up for my grandma's birthday / sort of live memorial because she was feeling ready to go because she kept on falling. And
you stayed with who?
My friend's family.
Okay.
And we were talking about this, and she's always kind of like, I guess, like what they call like collected, people who are in need in some way. And I go, oh, you're right. I never realized we were her first ones, and you guys saw that because we were always over at that person's house, all three of us that all had kind of single parents and different stories. But I'm still very, very close to them to this day. So that family, I had several teachers who were like my mentors. My neighbors who I babysat for were,
you found
going
like
back up,
safe places to go, people that could take you in.
Yeah, I don't really ever go back to Indiana because it's not super great. But when I do, which is mostly for my grandparents, and then my grandma is at, I think I said goodbye to her this time, most likely. Well, and that was the intent. But like being there is like, yeah, these people are really pivotal in my life, and
yeah,
in a lot of ways. So it's that balance. And so I think I was older. Like I wasn't like 5 years old when my mom got remarried or anything like that. Like a very young kid. And so I think I always just rejected that norm of whatever the traditional is, or this like very strict thing. And my stepfather rejected us. Like I still don't understand why an adult, because it ultimately is his responsibility, right? I'm like, you knew that this person had kids, and he was nice to us when we were dating, and then it just changed. And then it definitely changed when he had his own kid, of the way that we were all treated. But, I think there was a lot of like wanting connection and then kind of figuring it out. And overall, I that feels so far away, like that time frame and all the things in my memory of all of that. And I think I've like, created a wonderful life and chosen family and all the other things. And
what did
from it?
Do you remember felt sense of love with your dad? Like things y'all would do together, or this feeling of like, I am loved? Oftentimes people will say like, yeah, they told me I love you, but I'm thinking more of like when you really felt deep connection and love with your dad.
Yeah, I never felt rejected by him. Never, like.
Did y'all do something together, or?
Like, I mean, he did a lot of stuff. We did a lot of trips. We did a lot of, like traditions, and
y'all had a lot of rituals.
Yeah, cultivating like really great memories and different things. So like, I think of those, or I want to recreate those for my child, or that's what I just try to do.
Yeah. What is one of the rituals from your dad's relationship that you remember?
Well, so one of the ones that we still do, and we did this past Christmas, is those like the Christmas poppers, So having like really good, really good food, and kind of you build out the thing so everybody opens it and reads their joke and puts on the crown and the toys.
Christmas rituals that your dad really championed.
Yeah, for sure. And all the surprises with the gifts and those types of things.
That was really important to him.
Yeah, he liked the surprise.
Yeah.
Right.
Created that magic for you guys.
Yeah, he was definitely good at magic. I did this for his memorial. I did, because I'm very big on my kid knowing how to process and move through grief and be able to talk about it. So for all these deaths, I've done some type of kid-friendly part to the memorial, done just a separate one for the kids. So this one, though, I had a sand that represented all the different things of my dad, right, of all the different colors of the traits, and had people come up and pour some sand and talk that they wanted to share.
Like make a little sand art thing, is that?
Yeah, in a vase. And so the kids started first, which is really cool because, like, you know, even they're looking at it, it's like, oh, I did this one and my cousin did this one and these types of things. But I started with magic because I was like, nobody else is going to really say magic, right? But then all these other adults, like, you know, my dad's peers were also saying that of magic. Just like how, you know, like he didn't necessarily have the best social skills. Like, you know, he was shy and maybe socially awkward at some times. But I mean, like anybody, like his friends, just that intellectual curiosity, you know, that love all the things, like, you know, of just being able to talk and process and do all of that stuff.
Go Ken.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I was just really surprised that, like, there's a lot. I think I chose like the color orange. I didn't choose like one of my favorite colors for this because I was like, that's hardly anyone's going to put it in there, but it's like almost all that with some other things sprinkled in there. But like, I don't know that. And I have that at my home too, but that was something that was like, oh, it wasn't just us. It wasn't just about us. It was just with everybody. Like he definitely liked.
Everybody had that same sense.
Yeah, like kind of like, you know, that's how he connected, was like kind of planning these things, and he would plan it really well, and you know, and then he'd show up in these like really kind of magical ways, whether even if it was like a dinner party or a trip or a note or recognition at the company. They always had these recognition boards and these other things. So probably they also cultivated it there. And
what about with your mom?
With my mom,
felt sense of love and intimacy.
I mean, I think my mom, and I don't really want to go into too many details because I don't feel like they're really mine to share. Yeah. But I think that's always been more complicated. And I think there's other parts of that that she has really these wonderful, beautiful sides of her and really caring sides of her that when they're there, I really enjoy seeing and connecting, and have worked through some of the things so I'm able to do that. And then there's other things that are going on that make it a very difficult and complicated relationship at times.
I'm estranged from my mom, so I could understand.
Yeah, and that's a really hard decision to make, you know, of all of those things and all of that.
Well, I don't know how else to stop a cycle of violence.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it's very important for safety. Yeah. And it's just sad, you know, it's sad because, like, that's always a need of wanting that, or wanting the person to be healthy enough or safe enough or any of those things.
Folks get as far as they can with the resources that they get exposed to or they seek out, and then it's on, at least for me, it's on me to continue that journey from the place where I start and the resources I can find and seek out.
And it's really powerful. There had to be somebody in your life that did something to be on this path and not recreating that, you know, for you. Normally there is. Like normally there's those glimmers or those mentors or somebody or a friend that you know what not to do, but that having, because this is the thing, you know, when I see other people who kind of come from, or when I work with other people that maybe have come from really challenging or really traumatic, or what we call ACE, like ACE? The ACEs, the adverse childhood experience score.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most protective factors is like different relationships where they're modeled something differently. Cause I'm just like, I don't know how you do it, but like, and same for me, like, you know, I could have easily done other things, but like I had enough sense of knowing who is a good person to know who to invest in.
Yeah. It
right.
Sounds like.
And in that way of like, you know, it's like, despite everything you've been through, like you have really good people around, like you know, there's something in there that's protecting you that chooses these awesome people.
Yeah.
And like, given what you've been given, I don't know how you did it, but like you are. And then it's working on really accepting it and embracing it. Cause there is that part when when you've been either abused or you've been rejected or those types of things, that like it's really hard to receive it. And sometimes we get in our own, our nervous systems get in our own way of allowing that in. And when that happens in that sense of safety, that's what I love, because it's almost like this weight, this like balloon, this like heavy load comes off, and people feel like they're, you see it when they walk into the room. And I think I've felt that too.
When I think back on the stories you've shared, it seems like for you, that was your grandmother was a real big part of that. And also your uncle being a part of Outward Bound and being a part of your grandparents' story of travel and your grandmother's way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. It's just like sometimes I was like attracted to things. I'm like, oh yeah, because I was in upstate New York. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do an internship in New York City. That's totally what I want to do. I want to do this. That's what I wanted to do. And then I went, and somehow I got into this like study abroad program in Mexico, because I was like telling them, I'm like, this is the only summer I'm going to do this in Oaxaca.
I was in Oaxaca City. I did mine in Cuernavaca.
Oh, very cool.
I loved Cuernavaca. Mexico's amazing. You learned hablas español?
Yes, sí.
C is the correct answer. Or más o menos. I will also accept bastante.
Okay. Yeah, no, I actually, so I went abroad, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is my new thing. And I've lived in a lot of Spanish-speaking countries.
You have? Mm-hmm. Which ones?
I lived in Spain for a year.
Where were you in Spain? That's where I've been going and visiting recently. I love Spain.
Mostly Madrid, and that was a really cool time. And my school definitely, they did this, you could just study something. It was called a Take 5 program that you had to apply for a scholarship. So I applied for it. See, this is the thing. I've always just done things differently, but it's worked out for me. So I think it's just great. You normally take it your 5th year. I took it my junior year because I wanted to be abroad when everybody else was abroad, so I didn't miss my friends. And so I studied a Spanish art and history and culture in Spain for a year. Ooh. So I was like in all the art museums and all the other things. It was great. I've lived in Honduras. I did programs in so spent summers like in Mexico and Peru.
Honduras is a cool country. I've only spent a little bit of time there, but and interesting. Like it was one of the one of like Nicaragua, Honduras, all of those. It was like more rustic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very different. But
where were you? Were you in Granada or?
No, that's in Nicaragua. I was on the border of Nicaragua. I was in a town called Paradise, El Paraíso. Okay. Yeah, so a small border town.
Wow.
Yeah.
What drew you to those locations?
So when I think in 5th grade, there's a different country in this, elementary school that I went to. They focus on a different country every year. And the country was Spain, my 5th year. And I was in Don Quixote in the play and that type of stuff, Yeah. And my Spanish teacher in elementary school just loved Spain. She lived in Spain. She loved it. So now.
Yeah, she imparted ADHD, that love.
Right, yeah. And I think, too, my grandparents got the big reactions from travel. I mean, I will say, this is what I talk about, the praise pillar. It's important to know your praise needs because, I totally was the one that sometimes went off board with praise that wasn't really serving me for reinforcing things that aren't really aligned with my values. Yeah. But I think I also saw that, it's or the first time I went to see a Broadway show and it's just the mesmerization and I think about that every time I see shows now too. I'm people it's for the applause. It's all the stuff that really works for ADHD, the applause, the praise, the creativity, the collaboration, all of these things. And as an adult, I'm all of this stuff, the creativity, the time, all of these things are such gifts, and gifts that work with our brain. But to go back to your question, so that was planted that I needed to go to Spain. I was I'm going to live in Spain. Done.
From your 5th grade class.
5th grade class, I knew I was going to do that. And so then when I got to high school, I was well, why don't we have any trips abroad? So anyways, I started a Spanish club with one of the Spanish teachers. And then we got people together. And then that Spanish club, we were okay, we're going to Spain. And so we went and we went for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or something. It wasn't that long, but it was a big deal. right? I think it was my first international trip. So we went to Spain and I loved it. And I was like, I am going to live here. So that's how Spain happened. And also too, like my aunt and uncle and cousins, they immigrated and lived in Mexico and in Costa Rica. So like all my cousins always got to speak in Spanish. My mom would never let me go visit them, which was always like a little bit of a sore point because my brain would have picked it up and I would have had less of an accent and it would have been easier. But I was always interested in Spanish because we would always meet in South Padre. Like we would drive down from Austin, they would drive up from Mexico, and my grandparents would fly in from LA. And so we always spent like this magical week in South Padre Island. But you get a lot of people from Mexico there, or a lot of people speaking Spanish. And so I always felt kind of like more like, I want to know. I want to learn. Like I want to switch between multiple languages and have secret conversations and all these things. So I always wanted to know Spanish. I think because of that, and there's just I followed the excitement. There is a study abroad program in Peru that everybody raved about. With one of the professors that he would go there. So I spent a summer in Peru studying international development, and it was incredibly eye-opening and really impactful. Mexico, I just wanted to learn Spanish, and also that's where my cousins grew up for 13 years, and that's just what was available at my program. And then in Honduras, I did Peace Corps, so that's where I was assigned.
You did Peace Corps? Mm-hmm. Wow, that had to have been a defining experience. Yeah, it is a good coming of age experience. Definitely learned a lot in a lot of different ways, and so I was there. I was in Honduras for 2.5 years, and a lot of great ADHDers. It's like it was a great community, right? Of people, of friends. I definitely have found my people in my community that I still am very connected to. What was the Peace Corps like?
I mean, it's okay. Well, this is also a very long time ago now. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, are we really coming up on, let's see here. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time.
42, was that, when did you do it? How old were you?
I was like 24 to 26, and then we backpacked. A whole bunch of us backpacked, so we backpacked all the way down to South America. So I turned 27 in South America. Yeah,
what an adventurous life!
I know. I really do feel like I kind of missed this window. We were supposed to move to Japan, but this is the thing. This was also very modeled in this time frame for me, of people who would do that. Right. And my grandparents did this before there was ATMs and there was paper tickets and all this other stuff, where it's like you travel now. It's such a different world with being able to be connected on your phone and figure out where things are and all the other things, and, see videos of everywhere you go. But I think Peace Corps was a really good developmental experience for me. There's definitely stuff that I still unpack about what that means and the role of the U.S. And I wanted to do international development, and that's also changed my mind. There was 2 big books on international development and aid, and I kind of sided with the one of we're the problem. And I think there's a lot of reinforcement of that too. I do think Honduras, because it had been around for so long, did a lot better job than other Peace Corps countries that being really more in the sustainability and, kind of, I don't know what we called it at the time, cultural competency, which you can never really be fully competent in that, but of kind of really understanding our role and what are the negative impacts of that. And I had a great experience. There's a lot of things where you're have a lot of downtime and you have to figure out how to create programs or meet people and all the other things. But it was, I made a lot of really good friends there, not just with the Peace Corps volunteers, with JICA, the Japanese volunteers too. That's why we wanted to move to Japan, because we were learning Japanese from them, and they were just like, "Yay!" Anytime we said we're like table, they're like, "Yay, machi yoshineta!" And I was like, "Yay!" Like I was just like, "This is the best language ever," not realizing I just like their reaction.
I like it.
Yeah, I know. I was like, we were like, these are the best people, and then me and my friend would be like, "Yeah, but not everybody in the U.S. is Peace Corps volunteer stuff, so not everybody in Japan can be as awesome as the people we have here in Honduras." And then, of course, like Hondurans, catrachos, they were just, I do love living in Latin America for a lot of different reasons. It's very more relationally focused, right?
Yep.
And so there's that. And also, too, I think it works really well. Same with Spain for ADHD. So I think that's the other thing is like, because I was always changing environments. There's always like this reason that I'm different. That wasn't like you're bad. They're like, oh, that's just the like American thing. They're different, right? They do things differently. But like nobody's on time, time is like a different
time's
concept.
Different in Latin America.
Like the consequences aren't there. Like you have more consequences for showing up on time,
Yeah.
So like, and that's what I was saying too, even with the language, with emotions, like the subjunctive there, it holds this thing that it changes, that it's not permanent. And so even in the language itself, I think there's a lot of things that are beneficial. And so anyways, that was definitely a really good time. I definitely really liked, backpacking. I definitely love traveling. And so, but I also, I think it's also important to hold the different things, of like neocolonialism, our impact, all the other stuff. And especially with the coup that happened after I left, and also understanding how the U.S. impacts other countries, all of those things are kind of hard lessons in a lot of ways. Like I think in those fields, it was really important. I'm very thankful that I had that experience. But it's also like a lot of the things and myths that we are taught in the U.S. like kind of go away when you've lived in other countries. And when I lived in Spain too, that was when the Iraq War started, and I was like, okay, what's going? Like we're getting different media, we're getting different things, like all this stuff of all the protests there, of all all the things that happened that I think are really formative of never kind of being in this like mainstream container that I think a lot of ADHDers struggle with, because I think I've always been on the outside, and then kind of when I look in that inside where the majority is, I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense to my brain, and I end up in a different environment.
Man, I could continue this conversation with you probably for hours and hours. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm cognizant that we're getting towards the end of landing this plane.
Okay.
Oh, it's hard to do because you're easy to listen to, and there's so much good information, and seeing the pebbles that have led you to where you are now, writing a book on ADHD and Us, and supporting people in all the different ways you have. It sounds like both children and couples and folks at different stages of life in different environments, whether it was like supporting folks in like outward bound type of environments, or in these type of environments, and then new environments online that you're like scaffolding out as we speak.
Yeah. Yes, I am kind of excited for the newest adventure. Well, hopefully it works out.
I'm really excited for your newest adventures too.
Yeah.
It's really cool. What do we want to share as we land the plane? Is there anything that you feel is left unsaid, or any parting words?
Well, I don't know. There's so much more, because it's like my whole adulthood.
Well, I'll invite you to continue this discussion. I would love to continue. I just think 2-hour chunks is about what people can manage.
I mean, I guess let's see here. I think in a lot of ways, I think that, well, I guess, can I talk about more of the ADHD part?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do.
Okay. Because I'm like, Anita. It's going off the other side. But I think one of the most important things that I've realized in kind of like my journey as an adult and all these other things, of in the context of ADHD is the sensory processing piece of it. And I really got lucky with that because my friends told me to send my kid to occupational therapy, where I was like, what is this magical world? And I wish every kid gets to go into one of those rooms and experience it. And so I learned about sensory processing because I had a really good occupational therapist who had extra training in it. And that helped my kids sleep through the night because I didn't realize that that was part of sensory processing and needs could be sleep related. I just didn't know that much about it. And so that has been, I think, one of the biggest things that I've really dug into research when I've had time and bandwidth to do it. And I work with an occupational therapist here in Austin who is awesome. If we ever can get her on here or us together of some of the work we do.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Because I think our field is like, we're still learning and growing so much with ADHD. And the more that I learn about sensory processing and the overlap of traits and all these other things, and then why some of my interventions work and why they would work for, certain sensory profiles and not other sensory profiles, I think is really important. And I think that's one of the reasons too I struggled so much in the beginning as a mom, not necessarily like with like postpartum anxiety or depression, but just kind of like how all the stuff was extra hard that I didn't feel like super prepared for. But I think it was because too of my sensory needs weren't being met because I had so many I had so many physical complications that like walking was really painful. Like it was really hard to pick up my baby. So I couldn't get my sensory needs met. And that totally impacts that hyperactivity, the executive functioning, all of these things. Like there's so much cool research out there and our fields need to be combined. So I think like in my world, like that's something that I've been very interested in. And when I teach at conferences or other things, that's kind of like my goal of integrating that because there's such a comprehensive model that is really important and that is way more integrated. And I do really like more integrated health care systems. When I interned at the VA, I think that was one of the things they were good at, that we're all of us were talking together. We all had access to notes. We could all easily refer out, those types of things. So like I tend to work with, in the medical model, with a lot of people who are like psychiatrists or, that will be ADHD informed, and occupational therapists when I'm like, okay, your sensory profile is like out of the realm of what I can do from the trainings that I've received or just, the consultations. And it makes a huge difference because there's also like sensory-based anxiety. There's also all of this stuff. And like when you look at our classrooms of sitting still and not being in nature and we have less recess, right? Like I know for my brothers at least, like they got taken out of recess for moving their bodies. Yeah. And it's just like, what? Like, I don't know. So I really think that sensory processing component is really important. And we have 3 hidden systems that are the ones that really coordinate with like ADHD. Like we know of our 5. Like, I mean, that's when I worked in schools with kids. We did like those calm down boxes with the sensory boxes and the regulation. So we have a lot of that awareness, or at least I think people in Austin do, because that's part of the SEL curriculum. And the stuff, when I was a school social worker, I, got trainings in that and did that with kids and a whole bunch of different things. But the 3 hidden systems are so key. And so I don't know if you've ever heard the acronym like HALT, So HALT, it's called like, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? So like when you're having like some big feelings,
vulnerability factors.
Yeah. Like I've kind of check in first. Cause a lot of times, like our bodies and brains are interesting, especially with ADHD, cause we don't always get the cues in our body. So when we get them, it's like big, right? It's intense because like we're like, I'm not hungry.
But that bell's been going off for a while. We just weren't aware of it.
Right. And so, which is why I love, which is part of your interoception sensory processing system. Right. So that's why I love the interoception, like instead of mindfulness of you're learning about your body, because mindfulness is really hard for ADHD when you have an under-responsive, like interoception system, because we don't get the signals. And then too, because I've seen Kung Fu Panda twice now.
Kung Fu Panda House.
What? So good for ADHD. But it's a scene where he's just like trying to meditate, and he's like, peas, sweet peas, this, and my kid is just laughing. The meditation, and then, but that's like so ADHD, right? You know, they're like, oh, just pay attention to your body, and it's like, it's like, okay, I have to do this and this and this and all these other things. It's just like the spiraling of thoughts. But that's why I use HALTs is like your sensory processing needs. So I try to bring that into awareness. I do a lot of sensory communication strategies, because some of the people I've really liked and listened to, like sometimes I hear them on their relationship podcast or something, and they're like, I just need to sit and listen. Or they're being told to just sit still and really pay attention on what their person's saying. And you do want to hear what the other person's saying. You do want to understand.
But you can move while you do that.
Right. But there's other sensory ways that you can do that aren't going to be dysregulating for the other person.
Disruptive, yeah.
And that's where it's kind of this fine dance that we work
together.
That's helpful. Like I can give, in my trainings or book, like certain tools, but that's where it comes like when you have more of either the group experience or something of getting that direct feedback, it's so much easier than just trying everything, especially after you've tried everything that doesn't work. It's really challenging. And our whole medical system too for ADHD is like impossible. It's just so hard to find an appointment, book an appointment, follow up with insurance, all of those things. But I think that understanding our sensory needs, and I hope more clinicians, this is like my own little pet project, like really get into that. I didn't have time to like include or do more research on it when I was writing the book. So it's not really in there, but like all my other work and stuff is because and I think that's the thing too, like for me also as a parent, like I imagined, I was like, okay, I have so much energy, I'm just going to be normal. Right. And then it's like, I couldn't do anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I have no energy at all. Like the swing was really surprising because pregnancy is it disrupts a lot of your sensory processing systems. That's why you tend to get more motion sick or get more vertigo or like it messes with your body in these ways. And then we also tend to have hypermobility and all of this stuff that I didn't know. And I feel like I deserve to know, or like the medical model should have told me or given me adequate support in these ways. Yeah. And I do have a great medical team that I really love and trust and really appreciate. And I feel really lucky, but like I cultivated that. That wasn't like part of like the maternal health or any of the education or any of those things. And I think that's also too why like parenthood is such generally kind of that big thing for ADHD and ADHD relationships, because one, in the US, like we have a lot of consequences for not being on top of things. Like my family, my sister-in-law in Mexico, she can sign my niece up for a camp like the day before. She can change schools. And I'm like, you can do that? Really? Sometimes I go down there. I'm like, do we have to buy this? Do we have to buy these things in advance? And they're like, no, we can buy a day of. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true. That's great. Like, and then I remember back to why I liked living in those countries, because everything is, it works when you're spontaneous and spur of the moment.
That's how I am, more spontaneous.
Yeah. And like here in the US, with my stepfather, at least, it was just like, okay, like how you respect people is like you take care of yourself and you show up early and you do all these things. Like you don't burden others. That's like a sign. We're kind of
taught a model that doesn't jive with the way that we are. And then there's this like, oh, if I don't do that intuitively or figure out how to do that and way, I'm not right, or I'm
but you need the different supports on how to do that, right? Like there's ways to bring more awareness to time and systems that work really well. Yeah. But like when you're just not like, well, just do it. I mean, you just do it, or just set an alarm or something. It's not going to work.
Right. You need to put some of those games around it. You need to put some of that praise around it. You need to put some of that
positive reward. I mean, we got like a letter from AISD last year. I mean, my husband was in charge of getting my kid to school on time, and he would be like 10 seconds, and they marked us tardy. What? I'm like, see, see where I learned all these things? Because like when we were together, I was like, wow, it's just like the time. He's so late all the time, which is like totally fine if I'm living in a different country and that's the norm. I'm like, all right, I'm in it. But I'm like, here, I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I don't want to rush this. And then all my friends told me, they're like, Anita, but you're late. And I'm like, I am? I'm like, huh? Okay, I need to maybe change that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, not as late as this person, which is, we've worked that out in a way that works really well for us. But it is, I don't know, there are all these differences, but there's bigger consequences. What I'm saying is like here in the US, like you forget about camp, then you're really screwed. Or like the next month, we have a Wednesday off. That for the first time ever in AISD, April 10th, if you didn't know, like that for people who are not on top of those things, that can really be disruptive to your schedules and all these other blocks that get so put into place because we don't have a lot of social supports and systems that catch everything. So it's really two people that are juggling too much and it's too much pressure on this like individual family system to begin with. So that's where I see like a lot of ADHDers hit their breaking point is like midlife. So if you've been lucky enough to have figured out tools that work for you, find careers that are successful for you that tend to work well with your brain, where there's a lot of urgency, crisis, like ERs, cybersecurity, arts, following your interest. A lot of people also like, coding, software engineering, that type of thing. Like, so if you found environments that work for you, that's awesome. But then a lot of the times, if you weren't modeled that or you don't know what that is, you don't know how to bring it back home. And then it gets really, really confusing because then your other person is like, but you can do this at work. Why can't you do this here? Like, why can't you repair a fence here? But like when your friend needs it, you can go and do it because there's a big reward and praise and not criticism, which is what you tend to get. Because that's what we were getting
at home.
Yeah. And so this cycle like that builds and builds and builds and builds. And I just went like, the typical ADHD all over the place. Because I think I was talking about.
I love you. You're awesome.
sensory processing is working even in the home to make it sensory friendly, to be working with your brain, all of those things. And when you make those adaptions, it works. And I think one of the best things that I've ever, in retrospect, the best environment that I ever was in, the most ADHD affirming environment I was ever in, was when I was working at that nature immersion camp. That was just like so well funded, amazing staff. And when I wrote the book, I emailed like a lot of the people I used to work with, and half of them were like, "Oh, I have ADHD. Oh, this will be great," And I was like, "Oh, no wonder," because I would pair counselors with the person who could like remember the medical cards, would like get the sunblock, do all the other things, and they're really good at this stuff. And they would all, and I would, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like that's the other thing that other neurotypical people are like, I don't know, it's not that hard. I'm like, wow, you put away, where this is great, and they're just like, oh, I'm not used to getting all this recognition for this. And I'm like, this is fantastic. And then they would really appreciate, I'd pair with the other person who was really good at like being spontaneous and, gathering the kids' attention or coming up with a solution or game in the moment. And it was such a beautiful balance. And that was really before like, I was in graduate school when I started as a director at this nature immersion camp. And then I just continued. I was like, oh, okay, I got a job at a school. I was like, perfect. I can still continue until I became pregnant. But it was such a great environment, and it really embraced growth mindset, and it really had all of these pillars, and it really worked with these like ebbs and flows of knowing how to kind of like get your sensory needs met and excitement up, but then also come back to the calm and have the reflection and all of these things. And when I look at it, when we're all problem solving, it's like, okay, we're having trouble with like the dish line. Okay, well, let's get signs up there. So, people have the visual steps and the visual reminders. We all have like body doubling.
Set expectations, manage expectations.
Like and I'm not a big pranker. I don't like pranks, but there is kind of a culture of pranks. So I was like, I don't like this, right? And then get it. It's people's love languages, like in that sense of like, it's how they show care, because it's like you take thought, there's a big reaction, all of these things. So we turned them into compassionate pranks. So we called them cranks. So people would like do the community responsibilities and surprise them. But like, instead of the kids going, oh, we have the responsibilities, we started to bring a lot of this stuff. And and I in retrospectively, like I have on YouTube, like just a live dialogue with one of the people I used to work with who did end up becoming like the director eventually and everything else. And we were talking about like how wonderful this place was that embraced all of these pillars, how healing and restorative it was for all of us, how it's still such a great community. Like when we still go back there, we're still very active in that community. And and just nature is such a great teacher. It's such a great regulator. It is so good for ADHD, right? Like when you're talking about
nature's
rock
church.
climbing, it is like so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyways, I think that environment is so helpful as kind of this model, that like I want people to be able to, or give enough tools and information for people to be able to like cultivate that and whatever works for them, because we all have limitations of what we're responsible for, what the challenges are in our lives, like the resources we have, like they're all different, and so it doesn't look the same for everyone. But I really do think that, and research goes to show it, especially that big Harvard study, but like those our primary relationships are what matters, like even when we're going through traumatic experiences, it is not getting stuck in it by having somebody witness and be there with you in all of it, and all of those things and those supports. So I think in those ways of like creating those communities, finding those communities, working on those relationships.
What are you looking at?
In my book.
Heck yeah.
of just like, that and I love working with parents because I'm like, you do this with your kid. I know you can do this with your partner. Like, you can't fool me, And so it's a lot of the things that we will do for others that we have to apply to ourselves and our other, primary partner, because for some reason what's modeled in the US is like we treat oftentimes the people closest to us with like lack of respect or frustration, or like we don't have to do our own emotional regulation. We just kind of like take our and throw it on them. Ugh. And so that doesn't really feel good to anybody. And so when we are able to slowly change that, and I think it's wonderful that so many parents are doing that with our kids, and then we can apply that. But then they're like, well, I shouldn't have to do that. They're an adult. Why would I have to do that? Why do I have to give them a round of applause, blah, blah, blah. It's about time. And it's like, oof.
Yeah. Speaking of time.
Yes.
You were awesome.
Yeah.
You were awesome. Uh-huh. I hope, if I have my druthers, we will do this again.
Okay.
So that I can experience this again. So much knowledge, so much wisdom.
Thank you.
So much thoughtfulness. And you tie it back to the experiences in your life that like brought you to these conclusions. And a strong passion and desire to share and to help folks.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Anita Robertson,
yes.
Anita Robertson. She's the author of ADHD and Us. You guys go check out this book. Also has workshops that she's developing that are going to be on an online platform. She's got folks she's working with for sensory that I hope that I can talk to too.
Yeah.
And hope we can continue this conversation. I feel real privileged to have had this time and your attention.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. And I hope it helps you in your journey and other people, and at least kind of continuing to spread more of that awareness and tools that do really make a big difference.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think that's the best part of my job, is seeing like that switch. And it takes time, especially when you have to unlearn, but that switch, and then things are a lot easier, and all that effort gets rewarded in that way where you're staying connected.
Yeah.
And you're appreciating and loving each other and supporting each other, because life is hard and it has ups and downs, and it's about the people that you're with a lot of the times that really make it.
We're social.
We are.
Would you like a hug, a high five, or a fist bump?
High five. I feel like we've been doing great at that.
Heck yeah. Well, Anita, that's a wrap.
Cool.
Thank you so much. You
Thank
can wave.
you.
Bye to everybody.
Woo. Yeah, I don't know exactly how you're going to wrap up that last one into a soundbite, but...